Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. It is Monday. It is the 23rd of February. It is spring in the air, I think. I think I can say that. I got out of the car this morning as I arrived here in our new studios, and it was actually quite mild. It wasn't blowing a gale. It wasn't pouring. It wasn't wet. It wasn't freezing. So I wonder whether actually there is some light at the end of the tunnel, some kind of, horizon, which looks something other than completely dark and dingy and bloody horrible. And of course, as if I needed cheering up, which I don't, Emma Wolf is here. Emma, very good morning to you.
Good morning,
very
Mike.
happy Monday to you. Great to see you. It does feel a bit spring-like, doesn't it? I was down in the country at the weekend. There's like daffodils popping up.
Yeah.
There's green
Crocuses,
shoots.
violets.
Yes. Do you say crocuses or croci?
Crocuses.
I mean, I don't say croci. Sounds daft, doesn't it?
Snowdrops and crocuses and violets.
Yeah.
And it was a bit windy this morning, cycling over London Bridge,
right.
quite hurricaney. But there is definite light.
Yes.
As we look out of the studio, it's 7:01, 7:02.
It's definitely lighter, isn't it?
And it's lighter. So this is the earliest, obviously, that it's sunrise and sunrise.
Yes.
And it's definitely warmer. So much milder.
So much milder.
So much milder.
It's going to be 17 degrees, I think, on Wednesday, which is going to be lovely. The sun was out. I came back up from Sussex yesterday. The sun, as soon as I got to the M25, there was blue sky, sun. I put sunglasses on. It was amazing.
Yeah,
I'd literally forgotten. I spoke to my sister in America, who was waiting for this big nor'easter snowstorm to come, where they were predicting sort of like 3 feet of snow, right? Nor'easter, they called it. And I'm going, and she was laughing. I said, I've actually seen the sun for the first time in about 2 months, and I don't know what it's for.
I did think to myself, what is that?
What is it for?
White orb in the sky.
Yeah.
It wasn't yellow yet, but it was white, and it was trying to get through the clouds, and it was amazing.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was really good. This morning, we've got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about, mostly still on the Royals and on Andrew, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of slightly, I suppose, off to the side because the BAFTAs were last night, which I don't normally like to talk about, but William and Kate were there, and that's made a lot of the front pages because he apparently said he's not in a calm state.
Well, they're in this...
Why has he said that?
Well, exactly. William, he needs to kind of get a stiff upper lip. I'm a bit worried about, you okay, hun? When you look at William and you think, you okay, hun? He's having a bit of a midlife crisis. I know we're never allowed to talk ill of the late Queen, but I do think that William's gone a bit odd. The thing is, they're in a tricky position because they're trying to be very open and sort of they're in touch with mental health. They're the younger generation.
Yeah.
So he needs to kind of acknowledge all the wrongdoing, but he also needs to just pretend, like Charles, that nothing's gone wrong and there's nothing going on. So this thing about I'm not in a calm state, what did he mean?
I know. And I mean...
I've got an uncle who's an absolute wrong-un.
Wrong-un, yeah. Because you've got to assume that he will have had a conversation with some aide or other, won't he? Like, what are you going to say? If somebody asks you, how are you? What are you going to say? They would have worked it through, wouldn't they?
He should have just said, very, very well, thanks.
Yeah, I'm great. Really, really pleased to be at the BAFTAs.
So happy to be at the BAFTAs.
Yeah, something like that.
Yes.
But that's the other thing is that, she was at the rugby on Saturday, and England were woeful, by the way. I was meant to be at that game. Luckily, I didn't. The game got changed, so I went to the England-Wales game a couple of weeks ago. Because they were absolutely useless, slaughtered by Ireland. But she was in the stands, laughing, joking, looking for all the world like she didn't have a care in the world, like she doesn't have, her husband's uncle wasn't a horrible, ghastly sex pest who's just been arrested for the first time in 379 years.
I mean, Mike, I haven't been on since that photo, but that photo of Andrew is one for the ages.
Yeah.
That photograph, the guy Phil from Reuters, Phil Noble, somebody.
Yes.
I mean,
what a picture.
It's made his career.
Yeah. And somebody went into the Louvre yesterday.
It was ghastly.
Just horrible, yeah. But also shows you how out of touch he is with reality, that he thought that if he slinks down in the back of a car, he won't get his picture taken. And you go, no, they'll just take it through the front of the window, which is not blacked out. And, that's what they do for a living. And
I was doing a thing last night, and everyone was, a programme, and everyone was saying, oh, well, let's start to think about, what about his mental health? This is and I was saying, well, hang on a minute. Most people, if they get arrested and taken to a station for 11 hours of questioning, they go home and they probably have to get on the bus and find some food and get back to a cold house. He's gone home, he's got his Met Protection police officers here, there, and I don't actually feel that much sympathy.
And I'm told that he still has...
he's never been in touch with reality before. Do you know what? I don't really care.
I don't care.
He'll be fine. He's going back to a palace, effectively, a small cottage house that you and I are funding on some Sandringham
Did you
estate
see the size of the Royal Lodge? Because there was an aerial picture of it yesterday being searched by the police. Yeah. It's like a mini palace. I mean, literally, I'm not joking.
I think it was 30 rooms. I don't know how many ballrooms, how many bedrooms. living there at, life of Riley, I don't actually feel any sympathy whatsoever for him. Yeah, he's having a dose of reality now. Well, who knew what when?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the question I'm going to come to in a minute. But I read a story yesterday, I think it was in the Sunday Times, that said that he has continually, despite the fact that he hasn't really had a role for years in the royal family, he has continued to have 3 members of staff, a footman, a butler and a chef.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he doesn't even cook his own food. So when he wakes up in the morning, he doesn't go, shall I have a scrambled egg? No, somebody makes it for him.
He literally doesn't do a thing. And you know the thing about the 72 teddy bears all arranged around his bedroom in a certain way, and how he shouts at stuff. That whole lifestyle, I think, has continued and been maintained, despite the fact that he's done absolutely diddly squat for this country.
Right. And his nickname, which I'm not going to say it, only because, not because we can't swear on this show, but I don't want to say the word because apparently YouTube doesn't like it, but it begins with C and ends in T, and it's got 4 letters. Yeah. That was his code name by the police because he was so horrible.
That is...
I mean, Pooch is back, by the way. Welcome back, Pooch. We missed you on Friday. And by the way, for anybody who was watching on Friday, we must apologise. We had a bit of a glitch, which meant that we couldn't talk to anybody and hear them at the same time. The weird thing was that the audience...
That's a shame for a show.
I know.
You couldn't talk to them, hear them.
But the audience could hear...
What did you do? Mime?
No, so the audience could hear... We did a bit of miming. The audience could hear the guests, but we couldn't.
Oh, I see.
So we just had to not interview them because we couldn't hear what they were saying. Yeah. And at one point, Robert Jobson came on, the royal author, but he came on the phone. He FaceTimed me on the phone, and we just held the phone.
And why not?
And it was great, actually. I mean, it was a real kind of, what you might call cowboy journalism. But there we are. Stories in here today. Envoy Andrew would arrive late and only talk to young women. That's in the Mail by Jack Hardy. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor annoyed figures around the world and kept such dubious company while acting as trade envoy that Whitehall officials raised concerns.
Yeah.
We've also now learned that he might have used the royal flight and also RAF planes
bases
to fly around the world shagging, basically.
Well, basically, right? Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell allegedly arriving into sort of RAF wherever, Norham or whatever, getting cars to Sandringham, I think it was, or to one of the royal palaces. Yeah. Then there were the pictures of Andrew lying across guests at dinners. Yes. On those flights. And then they would fly out of other things. So in other words, flights that were used for sex trafficking young women that were not named on the flight itinerary.
Oh, so they wouldn't even, which is against the law, right?
And the Times are reporting that some of these evidence of the UK flights have been destroyed. So I think a lot of evidence will not be found.
No.
I think there will be boxes of stuff. Okay, of course now we have electronic records, but we are going back decades. Yeah. So where will all the evidence be? Lots of it will have been destroyed. Yeah. He's just moved house. He's just moved from Royal Lodge into somewhere else on the Sandringham estate. Right. So I just think letters, postcards, photos, all of that will have gone in the fire or conveniently got lost.
Well, that's it. The front page of the Times has got that story there. Evidence of Epstein's UK flights destroyed. Inside of the Sun, pages 10 and 11, they've got UK Lolita flights in FBI probe. Because I was talking to my sister.
Flights, that's
the
it.
Lolita flights. Yeah. They're meant to have flown into Stansted a lot of the time, which is why Essex police are involved. Yeah. But also, the FBI, I said to my sister yesterday, I said, what's the FBI doing exactly? Why is it, because there was a great piece in the Sunday Times yesterday saying, why is Andrew the only guy who seems to be getting blamed for all of this when you've got an entire panoply of people like Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and the rest, none of them seemingly being questioned by anyone.
But not just those celebrities. It was Camilla somebody. What's her face? Anyway, in Sunday Times.
Yeah, Camilla Long, I think, right?
Camilla Long.
Yeah, good piece.
Really good piece. And she was saying it's not just the celebrities. It's all the other men.
Yeah.
And it was men. It's all the other people who will have benefited from this financially, but also, from sex and whatever with young women.
Yes.
There were lots of other people that we're not hearing about.
Right. Gordon Brown seems to be calling for a lot of these investigations. I mean, he employed Peter Mandelson, right?
I know.
He gave him a job, right?
I know.
What did he think Peter Mandelson was going to be doing?
I've got a bit of a beef with Gordon Brown now. Yeah. A few months ago, I would have said, he's about the only politician I still respect. And I'm starting to think, you're remembering a lot of things that you didn't know about or remember. Yeah. Why is he suddenly remembering all this stuff?
Yeah, I know.
On the Sunday Times yesterday, Sunday Telegraph, he was a big probe about the RAF flights.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, actually, the civil service were in charge of it. Like, why did he
well,
not
I mean,
know?
Wouldn't somebody
I think
have
he's
said...
remembering before he's asked.
Wouldn't somebody have said to Gordon Brown, the then Prime Minister, excuse me, Prime Minister, we're a bit concerned about the number of flights being organised for Prince Andrew, who seems to be a trade envoy, but who seems to be going to Florida a lot, or who seems to be flying people around the world on RAF planes. You know, what's going on?
And in those 10 years when Andrew was a trade envoy, which he should never have been, Gordon Brown, as you say, was Prime Minister for 3 of those years.
Yeah.
So why is he conveniently remembering things now?
Yeah, I mean, it says in The Sun here, yesterday, Gordon Brown called for an investigation into whether taxpayer-funded jets and RAF bases were used by Andrew to facilitate his meet-ups with Epstein. Well, maybe you should have asked that question when he was bloody well doing it.
Exactly. I think it's a bit of how do we say arse covering?
Rewriting of history.
Say arse covering?
Yeah, absolutely. Arse covering is absolutely right.
In advance.
Yeah, the FBI is apparently investigating individuals, including Ghislaine Maxwell, who also helped to facilitate the exploitation of minors. See, I find it astonishing that all of this stuff was going on for years, right? We're talking years and years and years, and not one official, not one politician in this country or in America bothered to ask a question about it.
Exactly. Cover up after cover up after cover up, and it is absolutely shocking, and it goes deep into the royal family. I do not believe for a second that Charles didn't know what was going on.
No.
And I'm afraid I don't believe that the Queen didn't know what
was
going on.
That's something
I'm sorry, someone paid £12 million to Virginia Giuffre.
Yeah.
Somebody paid her off. Andrew didn't have a penny. He's never had a penny.
No.
Him and Fergie have always been, we haven't got 500,000 for the rent that's due tomorrow. Where did all the money come from? Where did all the cover-ups come from? You don't think that any of the coppers went to the royal coppers who were on the gates, and there are women coming in and out with probably blankets over their heads?
Well, I said this to you last week, I think. You know, it's impossible to believe that nobody noticed anything happening.
Exactly.
That they didn't know. You can't smuggle people into Buckingham Palace.
You can't smuggle people into Buckingham Palace or into Downing Street. You have to sign things. You have to show your security. It's absolute. Flight manifests being destroyed after a few months.
I know.
Absolute nonsense.
Did you see the story about Fergie over the weekend as well?
Yeah.
Who apparently
she's in a wellness retreat.
Yeah, a wellness retreat, 13 grand a day.
A night. Who is paying for that?
I don't know. But it'd be somebody that she's doing some kind of service for.
You know what? I think she and her daughters, and I do think the attacks on Beatrice and Eugenie, they make me feel a bit uncomfortable, because no one would choose to have Andrew as a father.
Yes.
And it isn't necessarily, it's not at all their fault. But they would do well maybe just to lie low.
Yeah.
You know, the girls have been off skiing with their children. It's not a good look.
It really isn't.
And Beatrice and Eugenie. And I just get so fed up at the fact that these idiots are living at the taxpayers' expense. We don't need them. And I was never a Republican, Mike.
No, I know.
I'm done with all this royal family nonsense.
No, I'm like you. I was always a great supporter.
I was always fine with it, because I think it is an asset to Britain. I think people do like it. But this sort of pushed me over the edge. I can't take any more of it.
I mean, I was a great supporter of the Queen, right?
Yeah.
And I always said, I think after the Queen goes, it's going to be difficult to sort of, continue to think of the royal family as people that are good for the country. Because I'm not a big fan of Williams, to be honest, because he's a bit woke and he's a bit kind of, green, while at the same time flying around in helicopters all the bloody time, right? But it now looks as though Andrew is going to besmirch the good name of the Queen, because she must have surely asked a couple of questions. And if she didn't ask any questions, she's complicit in covering up basically sex trafficking and, him assaulting women.
But she was known for being very astute. She was known for wanting information, for talking to her prime ministers, all of that. Are you genuinely thinking that she didn't know anything? Of course she knew. Do you think
she must have decided
no close advisors ever went to her and said, we have a bit of a problem with Andrew. This can't go on. I mean, it was misbehaviour from the very start, from the nursery, but all the way through school, all the way through college, all the way through whatever he did next, all the way through his career. Of course, she must have known things.
People have said, and I don't know, it's a bit early in the morning for this kind of talk, but that he was introduced to sex when he was 11 years old by a prostitute in Soho.
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell is that?
That's very odd. That made me feel really uncomfortable.
I know. I mean, I've got kids. You've got a son.
I know.
Can you imagine the likelihood of something like that happening?
Horrible.
Just, your son will be, 7 years away from that?
Exactly.
I'm sorry, that is just
That's absolutely vile. But then again, who knows what kind of little boy he was? He sounds like a pretty awful child from the beginning.
Yes, he really does.
Bullying
Absolutely
people
right.
in the nursery when he was tiny and stuff.
Absolutely right. I mean, it really is quite remarkable.
But what's going to happen? Is this a turning point for the monarchy? Seriously?
I think it is. I think it must be. We're going to be talking to a couple of royal experts coming up. I think Kingsley Schofield's joining us this morning from the US of A, and we'll get their view of it all. But I mean, it seems to me there are three things going on here. One, the horrible nature of what Andrew did. Two, the way the royal family are now dealing with it. But also three, the political fallout and a lot of people asking this over the weekend. How has Peter Mandelson not been arrested?
I know.
He did exactly the same thing
Exactly.
as Andrew in terms of what he was arrested for last Thursday, misconduct in public office. How has he not been lifted?
It's really strange. He's still, okay, the police went to his home, but they went in,
but they didn't arrest him.
But they didn't arrest him.
No.
He wasn't dragged off to a police station like that.
No.
So there is definite. Well, yeah, but we know about two-tier policing. This is what the country is famous for now.
Yeah.
Two-tier policing.
And none of the people in the Labour government who were very, very happy to see Mandelson return as ambassador to the United States. Not one of them has come out and said that Mandelson should be sort of stricken from history or anything like that.
Absolutely, I know. And all this posturing about, whether or not we remove... Starmer's seriously looking into whether we remove Andrew from the line of succession. No one cares. Literally,
why don't we
no
remove
one cares.
Starmer from Downing Street
Why don't we
first?
remove Starmer from Downing? Get out,
Right?
a lot of them.
Just
I
get
can't take
lost.
anymore.
By the way, just so you know, because we forgot to do the poll on Friday, because it was very, very sort of, haphazard on Friday. So we've got a poll going out. We just witnessed the end of the Winter Olympics last night. And they had the closing ceremony. And I am sick to death of listening to people on the radio and on TV going on about how brilliant it all was and how great it was. And apparently the Team GB came 15th, right? Which apparently is a great thing. 15th! That's
do you know
not
how
good.
many millions we spent on the Winter Olympics?
And
do you
probably,
know how many
I don't.
millions are being... Okay, I think it was 32 million
Was it?
on these middle-class sports to send
Right.
a load of kids out to the Winter Olympics.
Yeah.
We're apparently... This is the sport guy from a programme last night told me this. It's not just me making it up because I know nothing about sport, really. We're going to spend 328 million on LA, the LA...
the Olympic Games or the World Cup, is it?
Which is a proper one. It's a Summer
Olympics, yeah.
In 2028. I mean, do we have millions and millions?
Well,
Why are we
I've
doing
always
this?
said there are things that you should be able to do because they are commercially successful. There are things that you should be able to subsidise because they need to be subsidised. But what we don't need to do is subsidise people to become very wealthy individuals because they are involved in some kind of sport. And we're supposed to pay for them to become rich.
And then we make them Sir at the age of 21. When those sportsmen, when Sir Andy Murray, he was about 30.
Right.
Why do they need to be made a Sir or a lady or a dame or whatever at the age of 30?
And they talk about them being brave and isn't it marvellous? So
they
we've got
love it. They love playing tennis or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't need an honour for that.
No, exactly right. We've got a poll out, right? What's the world's most boring sport? And it is in this order.
Yeah, I got it right.
Curling. Number one, which is terrible, right? It's only Scottish people play that and Canadians, and they cheat, by the way. Cricket, which if you're Scottish, that's your revenge because the Scottish people hate cricket because it's English. Snooker, which there'll probably be loads of people complaining that we put snooker on there.
Cricket boring though. I don't follow cricket.
I've never played cricket.
People loved it.
Well, I mean, I've been to Lord's, right?
Yeah, I've been to Lord's.
And it's quite a good day out.
Well, I liked the day out, but I didn't really like the cricket. I couldn't see what was going on.
No.
It was so far away on a big, massive,
I sort of take the view that if you're dressed in long trousers and I know that there's an awful lot of athletic endeavour involved and it's quite dangerous and the ball comes at you really quick.
Yeah.
But if you're wearing shoes and long trousers...
Not really.
Not really
it's not very sporty, is it?
It's not really.
No.
And to wit, the one that's winning at the moment, and this will upset a few people, is women's football. Because people have been sending, ever since I said women's football's crap last couple of weeks ago, people have been sending me loads and loads of videos of really, really bad goalkeeping errors by women's football goalkeepers, right? So women's football currently leading at 42%, curling 29%, supporting me, 19% cricket, and only 9% of people think snooker's boring.
I think people enjoy snooker, and I think, snooker...
I used to play quite a lot of snooker, but again, it's not really a sport. You're dressed in normal clothes.
Yeah.
It's indoors. Yeah. You've normally got a glass of whiskey.
Like darts. I mean, Luke Littler, he's amazing, but he's a big fella.
He is.
He's not sporty.
Well, he's doner kebab special.
This is not that much exercise.
It's not really, is it? And
do they work out a lot mentally?
Yeah.
Do they do a lot of kind of endurance, mental stuff?
I'm sure that being able to do anything under pressure is a skill, right? Some people think this is difficult to do. I don't find it difficult, and you don't either because you're brilliant at it.
Telly?
No, just talking in front of a camera, But some people absolutely, freeze and get nervous and, have to take, pills to be able to get through it. I don't find that difficult. So I guess if you're a darts player, and you're in front of a big crowd of people, it could be intimidating, but it's still not really a sport. Sorry.
What I love about Luke Littler, this is so mean of me, I love the fact that when he became like, you know, a multi-billionaire and started winning everything, suddenly he had all these young 17, 18-year-old girlfriends around him. It's not funny.
Do you remember...
like the footballers.
Who was that Formula One driver who had a girlfriend from Devon, who's now probably old enough to have retired? It's not Lewis Hamilton, but the other British guy. Jenson Button, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember the big interview in The Sun with him and his girlfriend from Devon. And she was like, "Oh, my Jensen, you know, he's been with me since he was 16."
She got replaced pretty
First time he went to the Monte Carlo for a Formula One race.
Surrounded by the grid girls.
She was done. And he was like, he had a new girlfriend.
Absolutely.
Who was in the Pussycat Dolls or something, or some kind of model.
He's gone from supermodel to supermodel.
He's definitely traded up. Anyway, listen, Easy Boy says this on the super chats. I beg your pardon, Tommy. I'm not having that sort of talk. Emma can handle my cue. I'm sorry. You know, this is it's a family-run show. This is very clean. Easy Boy says, Mike, as Rafe said last week, the Andrew thing is a distraction from the real crap in government. Shine a torch on Starmer. Which we will do, actually.
It is being used as a huge dead cat. Look over there.
Because Starmer, once again, is in hot water. He's busy threatening people in the Chagos Islands. He's going to lock them up, right? And as somebody said at the weekend, when Nigel Farage tried to get a boat to the Chagos Islands, it's the only boat that Starmer's been able to stop, right? Which is the one that's got Nigel Farage on it, trying to go and talk to the guys in Chagos about why they should be supported by this country.
And Nigel Farage made a very interesting point about this is absolutely shocking to stop a British citizen entering British territory.
Yes.
Which I thought was very good. And then we've had the
Ben
Wallace popping up again this weekend.
What's
like
going
a bad
on with Ben
smell.
Wallace?
What
Making fun of Chris Parry. Chris Parry, who's a former NATO commander, right? Who's a great guy, good friend of this show.
Yeah,
we haven't had him on, but we will get him on soon. He started insulting Chris Parry, saying he didn't know anything about defence.
He was insulting everybody, wasn't he?
Yeah, being really chippy.
This is not part of the British overseas territory. You can't enter this water. Who are you?
And there's even John Rentoul, who's not exactly, you know, a supporter of the Tory government, said to Ben Wallace, you know, he's 120 miles away from Diego Garcia. He's nowhere near the area which is supposedly, you know, militarily
Ben Wallace
conflicted.
was actually factually incorrect on so many fronts. And also, didn't he leave government saying he just couldn't take it anymore? It was too much for him.
And he was asked to run for leader of the Tory party, and he declined under what can only be described as sort of woolly circumstances. And people said he's got something to hide, he doesn't want to be under scrutiny. I don't know what that thing is. But supposedly...
Oh, well, I think you do know, but you seem to be hinting but you probably can't say.
I'm not, because I don't know for sure. So I'm not going to say something that I don't know for sure. But certainly there were rumours. And I asked him on Twitter yesterday, why don't you tell us why you didn't run? Why don't you tell us, because he went on about how honesty in polls is really important. I'm like, why don't you be honest about why you didn't run for the leadership? He didn't answer, funnily enough. You know, who knows? But Starmer has annoyed me this morning because he's on the front page of the Times again, talking about his dead brother. He seems to talk about his dead brother a lot. He never talks about him while he was alive, but he talks about him all the time now that he's dead.
And there was a crisis, and he was suddenly away up north clearing out his dead brother's flat, you know, and I don't think it's a particularly good look when people use their dead mother or their dead brother or their special needs relative to cover up something.
Also, he talks about him dying in poverty, right? Yeah. This was a while ago, the last time he spoke about him. He's a millionaire. Right? If your brother is poor, why are you not giving him money? Why are you not helping him out? You know, he made out that he was sort of, you know, had difficulty, learning difficulties, a bit special needs, Well, why are you not paying for somebody to look after him then?
That was very, very odd. Right? We were all meant to feel desperately sympathetic. Of course one feels sympathy if someone's struggling. But, I mean, as far as I know, Starmer has various properties around North London. Yeah. Why couldn't he have helped him out?
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody knows where they are because they keep getting firebombed. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's not that hard to find them.
Quite nearly.
You know, which properties belong to Keir Starmer? The ones that are on fire, you know? I mean, how about this, right? Because one of the reasons he's talking about his brother again is that Bridget Phillipson today is going to get up in Parliament and she's going to explain why... the government is now going to change the way that special needs kids are dealt with in school.
And the special needs system is a mess.
It's a complete mess,
Absolute mess.
He says, my brother Nick had so much to contribute to Britain. He belonged in mainstream society, as do the wonderful adults that today's children with SEND, which is special educational needs, will grow up to be. And so I believe, where possible and right, these children also belong in mainstream schooling. Well, it's been a long time ago when people used to be put in special schools. They don't put them in special schools. You know why? Because every time a school identifies somebody as a special needs child, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't be, but they get more money. They basically, so it's in their interest to have as many special needs kids as possible.
Yeah, and we have a real crisis. I'm talking about state primary schools. You know, when you demand that children with special needs, whether they are special needs or not, or whether they're just difficult, or whether they're badly brought up, or whatever, when they are all in together, then it's difficult for children who are not special needs. It's bringing down the levels of education. Also, there are many people whose children have severe, profound things like autism or ADHD who would really like them to be in special provision. So the whole thing is a mess. Trying to get statement, you need a statement to get that money. So it's become, and obviously one's very, very sympathetic. There are children out there who genuinely have different learning styles, who need different things and do have special needs. But there are also many, many children, and also, Mike, many children whose now English really isn't their first language at home.
That's a major problem.
And that's tough for someone, parents who just want their children to be educated, and they're being educated alongside people who are, who do need extra support.
Yeah, exactly right.
The whole thing is not.
I think we've got
we've
got a Bridget Phillipson clip pooch, I think, haven't we? I think it's about special needs. Can we have a look at that?
Secretary of State, when can we expect to see draft legislation excluding the former Prince Andrew from the line of succession?
So we're not ruling anything out around this, but we have obviously got a live police investigation underway, so we'll not be setting out further steps until the police have been able to do their work and wherever that investigation, wherever the evidence takes them.
But so you're up for this, and also presumably advising the King to remove him from the Privy Council?
So we've said that we have to keep all of these options available to us, but you'll appreciate that because we have a live police investigation underway, it's right that the police are allowed to do their job. Once that is concluded, then of course we'll consider, in discussion with the royal family, with the King, what further action is needed. But I do just think as well, in all of this, we really shouldn't lose sight of where this began. And where this began was with young women and girls being exploited over an extended period of time by a network of very powerful men. And we can't ever forget that.
We can't ever forget that. She's awful, isn't she? Bloody awful. The other one I just want to show you quickly before you go is Boris Johnson appeared on Laura Kunsberg's show yesterday. We haven't seen Boris for a while. But he looked, and I have to say this, absolutely and utterly ridiculous. Check it out.
If we're going to have a plan for boots on the ground, I may be going in advance of a lot of thinking in the UK at the moment. But if we're going to have a plan for boots on the ground after the war, after Putin has condescended to have a ceasefire, then why not do it now? Just to make this point that it is up to the Ukrainians. I mean, these people wouldn't be there in a war-fighting capacity, right?
To be clear, you're saying that right now that UK military forces and from other European countries should go to Ukraine, to safe parts of Ukraine, to make a statement, to flip that switch, as you said, in Vladimir Putin's head, showing intent.
Yes, I think we're willing to do it in the context of a ceasefire, which of course puts all the initiative, all the power in Putin's hands. Why not do it now? There's no logical reason that I can see.
I mean, why?
Very odd.
The other guy there who's some kind of former leader of NATO or something, you might as well have had him wearing a stupid wig.
Yeah.
God, I'm just going to sit here because and he also had a sort of a stubble growth under his chin. That
like
looked
you
like
see on very, very old men who really can't.
Like he looked
shave
like he
himself.
hadn't shaved it for about a week or something.
No, it's very odd. Look, you're on
It's
television,
very
you're on
strange.
a flagship Sunday morning programme, everybody goes through, you and I know, everybody will go through hair and makeup, yeah? He could at least comb his hair. I get it that Boris's thing, part of his thing is that he's very kind of natural, that he does look a bit scruffy. He ruffles up.
But he
I've
makes
seen him
himself,
do it.
yeah.
He ruffles up his hair before, he makes it go forward. But that was actually scruffy and almost kind of disrespectful
kind of embarrassing,
to you.
wasn't it?
Embarrassing.
Yeah, really
and he's got a
embarrassing.
wife. I mean, Carrie could have said to him, look, come on, you just look like a tramp.
Yeah. He does. It's not good enough. I'm sorry.
Silly. It's silly.
And also, in addition to which, his message was, let's send loads of young kids to Ukraine as peacekeepers.
Where's your standards?
Yeah, right. What about your own kids?
You would have been thrown out of the army for looking like that.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't be allowed to sit on the front line.
No.
Absolutely right. Emma, listen, brilliant to see you.
Yeah, but before you let me go.
I've given you, because we've got some of these now. We've got some bumper stickers, right? So we're going to tell you later on this week exactly where you can get your hands on them.
I'm going to find somewhere to put it on my bicycle.
Okay.
Actually, on the back of the child seat.
There you go.
The new home of common sense.
Yeah, the new home of common sense.
Not baby on board, but
No.
yeah.
Excellent. Very good.
I'm not sure about the photo, Mike.
Yeah, I mean,
You've lost a few pounds.
I have lost a few pounds. I mean, we're going to try and update the graphics on the channel as well, because they've got a fat picture of you at the moment, which I don't really like. I haven't looked like that for a while. So hopefully a thinner picture.
Also,
what have you
some
got
of
there?
your loyal viewers, right?
Yes.
This is Lara and Martin in
Okay.
Homersfield Lake. And they always
Oh,
watch
wow.
the show.
Okay.
And they've sent you a beautiful calendar
That
with
is
all
lovely.
the carp and all the trout and all the
It's
catfish.
just like a fishing lake, isn't it?
Yeah. Beautiful.
Wow.
They've got 5 islands and they've got this massive lake, beautiful houses.
Pooch, we
and
should
that's
hang
in
this on the wall, shouldn't
sort
we?
of Norfolk, Suffolk borders.
Okay.
And we go there a lot. Me and Ludo go there a lot, and it's
Really
wonderful.
nice. Okay.
And then they've got a special present for you.
Wow, look at this. This is lovely, isn't it? And there's a little note as well. Hang on. It says, with compliments, dear Mike, here's a little something as you love herons. Maybe see you here one day. Best wishes, Martin and Lara. Thank you, Martin and Lara. It's very kind of you. Could it be a heron-related item? Let's have a look.
It's like
I'm
Christmas.
so bad at opening things. This
I know.
is the-
Pressure's on.
Oh, look, it's a heron tie. Wow.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Look at that.
That is really nice.
And I'll have to wear that. I'm going to wear that for Plank of the Week this week.
Okay.
All right.
We'll
That
wear
is
it
lovely.
next Monday.
Thank you, guys. That's really nice. Really kind. How exciting. Beautiful. And that looks a bit like the heron that I originally spotted in London. Before, when this whole thing,
Was this
heron
just
thing
where this
started.
whole
the whole
farce
thing
began?
started, yeah, because
was
it
a
was
heron.
sitting outside my flat on the railings and just overlooking the river. That's beautiful. Thank you, guys, Martin and Laura. Emma, great to see you as ever.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mondays are always good because Emma Wolf is here. You're going to have another busy week, no doubt. Back to school.
Back to school.
For Ludo.
Can you see the excitement? Oh my God, the relief.
I know.
I'm
Goodness
off to
gracious,
drink.
yeah.
From 9:01, I shall be drinking vodka in a bar somewhere near a
Yeah,
primary school.
People assume that, parents look forward to half term. They don't, because they basically have to look after the kids 24/7. It's a nightmare. Luckily, mine are old enough not to worry about it. But my son's coming back from Germany tonight. And so I'm afraid my flat, which I've enjoyed on my own for the last 10 days, is now going to be no longer. Just down to me. But listen, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Emma Wolf, see you next Monday. We'll be talking to more of you throughout the course of the thing. Wear a white shirt with the heron tie, says Real. All right. Crikey, I've only just got it. Care of Mike Tyndall. Just tell him how many Mandy There's a Prison Cell handy bumper stickers you want. Cute Kitten says, take care, Emma. Increase the volume on the clips, says Anthony. Pooch, there's one for you. We'll see what we can do. I mean, we're lucky we can hear anything today because we couldn't on Friday. Anyway, listen, coming up, Kinsey Schofield's going to join us from Los Angeles, California. Meanwhile, let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
The Mike Graham Show is smashing it all over the airwaves.
Good morning, all. Here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. Good morning. The government unveils a major £4 billion overhaul of Special Educational Needs and Disabilities, SEND, support in England, promising more inclusive mainstream schools, extra funding, and reforms to address spiralling costs and delays for children. Police continue searches linked to the recent arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor over alleged misconduct tied to Jeffrey.
Don't you forget now to like and subscribe and all the socials out there, especially our YouTube channel, flannel.
Thank you very much indeed. A lovely heron tie there, which I shall wear, as I say, later on this week. If you do want to send things in to us, by the way, we do have an address now, but we're inundated, it has to be said, with all sorts of stuff. So we're not actually asking for you to send anything in. Suite 19.6, Exhibition House, Addison Bridge Place, London W14 8XP. Now, before we do anything, we're about to talk to Kinsey Schofield from the United States of America. We'll get her take on what's going on with the royal family. The BAFTAs last night, Sean Penn winning for One Battle After Another, which I actually watched at the weekend. It's a pretty cool film, has to be said. Let's have a quick look, though, at a GB News clip, because Andrew, and that amazing picture of him coming out of the police station last Thursday night, has been hung in the Louvre in Paris. Have a look.
A police station on the day of his arrest. That is exactly the picture that Danny was talking about.
They should keep it.
If you are watching on
Very
TV,
dark.
you can see the pictures that have been put on your screens now. For those of you on radio, it is a framed picture of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and that shot of him in the back of that car as he was driven away. Now, the activists who also stuck a label under the photograph reading, "He's sweating now." Because, and that is, of course, in reference to the fact that when he was interviewed by Emily Maitlis, he claimed that he couldn't sweat because of a condition, but there he is. He's
Yeah, they still go on about that. He claims that he couldn't sweat. Well, as people said last Thursday when he was arrested, well, I bet he's sweating now. There's been so much happening since last Thursday when Andrew was arrested and then released after 11 and a half hours. The weekend has been sort of highlighted by stories about him using royal flights, using the RAF for various movements of Lolita-type women, moving people in and out of Britain. Essex Police investigating Stansted Airport private jet arrivals. We've got still 7 separate police forces in Britain looking into what Andrew's been up to. He has meanwhile been arrested for the suspicion of misconduct in a public office. Nobody really knows where it's all going to end. Meanwhile, on the front pages this morning, William and Kate at the BAFTAs last night. William saying, I'm not in a calm state. I mean, it's all kicking off and it's all going on. So we thought we'd better check in with our favourite royal correspondent, who is, of course, Kinsey Schofield in Hollywood, California. Kinsey, very good morning to you.
Mike, I feel so far away when there's so much big news.
Yes, I mean, it's quite extraordinary. And I mean, the first question I guess I must ask you is, how is America seeing this story? How are they seeing the royal family, you know, Prince Charles, King Charles, I should say, coming over to do a state visit not very far from now, in what, less than 2 months?
Yeah, at the end of April.
Yeah. So what's America saying? I mean, they must be in shock like we are.
We are in shock, but there's this very strange resentment that is simmering. Americans are waiting for American leadership to be held accountable. I think that there was a moment of relief because it felt like, oh, look, someone's actually getting in trouble for their association with Epstein. Not even, you know, what we know or associate, I should say, Andrew and Epstein for, which is young females, allegedly. Andrew says it's not true. But for the documents, the DOJ documents that suggest that Andrew was sharing government secrets with Jeffrey Epstein while he was in the role of government envoy. So there was a moment of relief where we thought, well, finally, somebody's someone aside from Ghislaine Maxwell is being punished for their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But now we patiently wait for the Clintons' testimony on Friday, and we wonder if Bill Gates will have to do more than one highly choreographed interview. When will any of the American leadership or the American personalities that were so chummy with Epstein have to answer for that relationship?
Yes, exactly right. And I mean, we don't know at all how long this is going to go on for. The feeling is that it's going to be a very long investigation, that there's going to be property search probably for the best part of the next several weeks. We're going to be looking at flight logs in Essex at Stansted Airport. They're looking into what happened at Royal Lodge. They're looking into, you know, so much stuff. And a lot of people are beginning to ask the question, you know, why is it that Andrew, despite the fact that everybody, you know, has no sympathy for him, is the only person sort of seemingly being investigated here?
I know, and I don't want to be a negative Nancy, but it is my understanding that prosecuting Andrew for sex crimes in the UK would be incredibly hard.
Yeah.
At this point in time, there are 9 different police forces investigating him, but there's a lack of willing witnesses here. Virginia Dufresne has tragically passed away. You can't cross-examine her book. A UK court would not accept that as fact. RICO, which is what government law enforcement here in the States got P. Diddy on and R. Kelly on, which was prostitution across state lines, doesn't exist in the UK the way it does here. The age of consent is much younger. And to quote one of my sources, what does it prove if Epstein flew women in on his plane who later had dinner with Andrew? Who saw him bed them? Who says they were not delighted to bed a prince if they did? So I think that people might have some very unrealistic expectations about what could actually come to fruition here.
Right. I mean, there's also quite a lot of questions being asked about how hard it is going to be to prove that he committed misconduct in public office, because that is also quite a tricky law, which is difficult to kind of get over the line, if you like. And so it's entirely possible that despite all of the things that have happened, that Andrew doesn't get charged with anything.
I know. And if that is the case, then I do think that Parliament should remove him from the line of succession. I mean, I say that because I think the royal family, they can't do it. That is that's legislation that has to happen. But something else has to happen. Otherwise, the anger surrounding the British royal family and the public sense that they've got a get out of jail free card will continue to just rise and rise and rise.
Exactly. And meanwhile, the BAFTAs last night, big night out for an awful lot of Hollywood celebrities. Sean Penn winning, I don't know if you've seen that movie, one battle after another, but it's an unusual film, let's put it that way. I watched it over the weekend. It's quite good. But quite sort of baffling in so many different ways. Leonardo DiCaprio seems to be morphing into Jack Nicholson, aged about 75, on those yachts that you used to see him on in Monaco, But the front pages today, full of pictures of Prince William and Kate. She was at the rugby on Saturday and seemingly laughing it up, having a great time. He's quoted this morning as having said, "I'm not in a calm state," which is kind of a very unroyal thing to say, isn't it?
Well, to be fair, he was discussing a movie that is highly emotional, and he was saying, "I'm just not there. I'm not in the right place to watch it," which it might have been a very innocent comment that we're all like jumping on based on the current circumstances. I mean, what I can tell you from my sources, this is not the way William would ever want to inherit the throne. William does not want his father to abdicate over this scandal and have to step up and take on this responsibility so soon. And I really sympathize with him there. So do I think he's not in a calm state? Probably not. But I also know that they're doing everything in their power to navigate a very difficult situation.
Yeah. And I mean, I was watching over the weekend various different commentators. Andrew Morton, who I haven't seen for a long time, who I used to work with, believe it or not, years and years ago before he became a superstar novelist, author. He used to work for the News of the World, and he and I tracked, funnily enough, one of the women who had been a very big girlfriend of Andrew's in Canada before he married Fergie. That's how far back I go, right? And he was saying that he thinks that it might be the case that the trip to America by Charles could be a watershed moment, because it could be that he then shows himself to be the acceptable face of the monarchy, while Andrew clearly is, the black sheep.
Wow, I love that take, because I do think that I'm worried about April. And we saw the way that there were some protesters at Windsor when President Trump was there for his state visit, and they projected images of Trump and Epstein along Windsor Castle. So I have been concerned about what the reaction will be in April. But yeah, I don't think that the king should abdicate. I think that a crisis is an opportunity to show you got to turn it into a moment, a leadership moment. The crown, if you believe in the monarchy, is divinely ordained. And in the traditional understanding of the monarchy, the role of the king is not a personal achievement. It's a divine responsibility. And if you believe what you're supposed to believe, the position is assigned by God, not by public opinion or the actions of a family member. Abdicating in response to scandal would contradict this sacred duty. And it would suggest that divine appointment is conditional on the behavior of relatives, which is absolutely ludicrous. We did not demand that King George step down because his brother was partying with Nazis.
Yes, I think that's a very good point. And finally, I suppose you can't have a conversation about any of this with you, Kinsey, without mentioning the dreaded Duchess of Sussex, who's apparently in the Sun this morning, teaching us all how to serve champagne. And now, she never does anything by accident, so what is she doing?
Well, my favorite, Mike, was when we were all losing our minds over that image of Andrew being released. I mean, maybe it happened a few minutes before that, but as that image is coming out, or as we're all trying to process the idea of a member of the royal family being arrested in for the first time in my lifetime, Meghan Markle sends an email blast telling everybody that they should buy one of, it says like, when the temperature drops, we start by striking a match, a steady flame on the table, soft light in the corners of the room, the familiar comfort of a scent that instantly changes the mood. Is it going to change the mood of the uncle that just got shoved in the slammer? I mean, it was wild to watch a senior royal being taken into custody, and there's Meghan pushing her wickless candles. It's just a masterclass in tone-deaf timing and proof that self-awareness is not part of Meghan Markle's strategy ever.
No.
And it also came out over the weekend that her father is getting fitted for a prosthetic leg because he had that emergency surgery last year. So, you know, her family's still dealing with some trials and some difficulty, but there's Harry and Meghan courtside at a basketball game.
Yeah, looking as miserable as hell. A wickless candle. What a great sort of metaphor for Prince Harry, or you know, Harry, formerly known as Prince Harry. But yeah, listen, brilliant as ever, Kinsey. Great to talk to you. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, Kinsey Schofield. Tell us how we can get a hold of your podcast while you're here, because I always forget to ask you.
No, you're fine. Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered. Thank you so much for asking. I appreciate that.
And how are the dogs? Pooch is asking, because he's obsessed with your dogs. Are they there?
Rue, come here. Rue, come here. I have a treat. Rue, will anybody move fast? They're not moving. Oh, wait, here comes Bigley. Here comes Bigley.
Here we go.
Bigley needs a haircut. Bigley needs a haircut.
There we go. Thank you very much indeed. Kinsey Schofield, what a woman. Fantastic. Great to see you, Kinsey. There we are. Hello.
Thank you.
This is the dog-friendly breakfast show. It's the only place you can do it. Kinsey Schofield, thank you so much indeed. In Hollywood, California, they're talking to us about the state of the nation in America as they prepare for the royal visit from King Charles. Coming up, we're going to speak to a new guest, someone we haven't spoken to before. His name is Lee Nalalingam, and he calls himself just a dad in Tower Hamlets. He's a bit more than that, and we'll tell you what we're talking to him about coming up after this.
Why don't you relax and be a bit more MG? That would be a triumph.
So, here we are, the Mike Graham Show. It is, 7:48? It's the first actual time check that I've given you, so my apologies for that. By the way, unless you've seen it already, the Mike Graham Show bumper sticker is now available. We'll be telling you exactly how to get your hands on one over the course of the next few days. We're setting up an entire operation in order to get them out to as many of you as possible, because we've known that so many of you want to stick them on the back of your car. So we will get those to you as soon as we possibly can. So keep watching and we'll give you some information on that. Coming up later on, we're going to be talking to a great many superb guests today. Anne Widdecombe joins us for her first weekly appearance, and she's going to be here, Widdy's Week, I think we're calling it, every single Monday from now until the end of time, as far as we can tell. But right now, we're going to talk about Sadiq Khan, the world's most hated mayor of London, has always been the most hated mayor of London. He gets more and more hated every single day. Lee Nalalingam is here with us, who is a man who, I guess the best way to describe you is to say that you are a sort of a citizen.
Remember, despite all of the others out there, it's always the others. Don't be a plank.
Lee, you've put yourself out there as a citizen who cares enough about his community, cares enough about London, cares enough about the waste of public money that goes on, to actually try and find out just exactly how much waste is going on. So introduce yourself to us first.
Cool. Yes. Hello. I am Lee. So I am. Honestly, I have hated politics. I've never been involved. In 22 years, I've voted twice.
Right.
This time last year, my council decided to put my council tax up again.
Right.
And I thought, what am I actually paying for?
Right.
So for the first time ever, I went down to my council to watch the budget meeting. And I basically couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Right.
I discovered that...
And is this Tower Hamlets
This
Council?
is Tower Hamlets Council.
Yeah. Right.
And so while I was there, I discovered that only a small percentage of us actually pay council tax.
Right.
It's only about £100 million they get for it.
Right.
I say only, obviously relative terms. So when they're putting up your council tax by 5%, that's £5 million.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about that in a budget of hundreds of millions, billion, it's peanuts.
Right. And when you say not many of us actually pay it, do you mean that a lot of people have it paid for them?
A lot of them have it paid for them. I think.
So what's the percentage there?
I think it's about 40%.
Okay.
In fact, one of my next Freedom of Information requests is going to be to get that information nationwide.
Yes, okay.
So that we can compare it all.
Right.
And I do business transformation for a living. So I go into companies, I look at what they're spending and find ways to help them save a few million quid.
All right.
So I went to look at the spend and found that Tower Hamlets in 2024 had spent £47.5 million on things like consultants and lawyers and recruitment firms and so on. Had no frame of reference. All I knew was that was almost half what we paid in council tax.
Right.
Went to look at Newham, found out they spent 51 million, give or take.
Yeah.
And then went, well, is this a common pattern?
Yeah. And is anybody, the thing that has always amazed me, and I'm so pleased that you're here to talk about this, because I've often talked about the waste of public money. I tend to concentrate on things like MPs' expenses and, the amount of money they spend on their office. And, they're busy telling us how we can save money and tighten our belts. Meanwhile, they're spending 320,000 quid a year, So to have your sort of forensic eye on it is really good, because I get the impression, I don't know if you agree, that public sector spending has nothing like the kind of scrutiny on it that private sector spending does. I mean, if you go into a company and you say, right, well, what are you spending on this, that, and the other? They've usually got a pretty straight answer for you. And they've usually, if they're not complete and utter idiots, got a pretty good handle on why they're spending that money. But in the public sector, they just don't care, do they?
So I've actually confirmed that this week.
Yeah.
So I've been looking at audit reports, which is a lot of fun.
I mean, I've looked at some of the stuff that you've posted and I've gone, because I'm a journalist by trade. I'm not very good at numbers. I'm not very good at figures. But there are some mind-boggling numbers in there.
There are some mind-boggling numbers in there. So if we just talk about the audit reports, this week, I mean, my council in Tower Hamlets has not had a clean audit since 2018.
Right.
The audit report in November has said that the figures don't add up. They're bypassing procurement rules. Contracts don't exist. Money's going missing.
Right.
And they even say in their audit report they couldn't finish the audit because the council wouldn't cooperate.
Wow. Right. And who's doing that audit report?
That was
then?
Ernst & Young, one of the largest audit
firms in the world. So they're hired by the council because legally they have to get it audited in order to sort of, maintain their credibility. And yet they don't cooperate with
That's it. And then on top of that, I was looking this week at government bodies and I found out DWP, this is from the National Audit Office, not my words, DWP hasn't had a clean audit in 37 years.
Wow.
HMRC hasn't passed their audit in 22.
Right.
The MOD in 16 years. The Cabinet Office in 2 years. And they're literally saying, the National Audit are publishing reports year after year, month after month, saying the figures don't add up. There's the exact words are material fraud and error. Tens of billions they can't account for, and we're just like, yeah, okay, carry on.
Right.
Raise taxes, do it again next year.
Which reminds me of when we used to talk about the European Union before Brexit. The European Union, I think, has never had a clean audit because they've never been able to provide sufficient evidence that their accounts are in order, effectively. And yet, these are organisations that spend billions and billions of pounds of taxpayers' money, and nobody seems to care.
That's what's absolutely baffling to me.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I don't understand why it's not front page news. I don't understand how it's allowed to carry on. I found out this week that some of our government bodies don't even use double entry bookkeeping.
Wow.
Which is just fundamental basics.
Yeah, you would think.
And if we did that in the private sector, I'd have internal audit knocking on my door and asking me some very difficult questions.
Well, can you imagine HMRC if you decided not to bother filing any company accounts? What would happen?
Yep. They would be there knocking on your door. Was it £100 fine a day, I think, for every day you're late with submitting? So
amazing, yeah. And so the one thing that we picked up on most recently was your investigation of Sadiq Khan's office and the Mayor of London and how much money they've spent, because that is mind-bogglingly huge. It's billions and billions of pounds.
11.7 billion. And again, not my words, that is what they've sent me. They've put it in writing, they've put it in the Excel file.
And this is over what period?
This is since 2020. Okay. I've been looking nationwide since 2020. 33.2 billion for the 112 public bodies that have responded so far, of which the Greater London Authority under Sadiq Khan is 11.7 billion of that.
Wow. And it took you a while to get the information out of them,
didn't it?
Took me
a while.
Because this is the other thing that I think has been one of the legacies of Tony Blair's government back in the early 2000s, when he said, right, we're going to do away with all of the kind of antiquated methods of getting information. We're going to create the Freedom of Information Act, right? And as journalists, we all went, oh, that's good, that's great. That means we could just ask a question and you'll give it to us. But in fact, what we discovered was the Freedom of Information Act was a way of masking freedom of information, so that they could say, oh, terribly sorry, that's going to cost you too much money to look into, so we can't investigate that. We can't give you that figure. Or, you know, they would take such a long time to answer a written question that people would just move on and give up. So tell us what your experience was.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Sadiq Khan's team initially responded essentially saying, go look on our website and figure it out for yourself.
Right.
I had to point out that trying to go back to 6 years of financial, you know, line by line data, not necessarily that easy.
It's really not easy. And even in your, you know, with your expertise, it's difficult. I mean, for me, when I started looking at some of these responses and I started looking at some of the things you've posted, I was like, you know, I was starting to feel a bit unwell because I wouldn't ever be able to spot. You know, I can see a story and I can see where there's holes in it, but I can't look at a financial report with any kind of expertise. That's just not my thing.
Yep. And so after being sent to that, pushed them through internal reviews, then they tried to claim that it was too much time.
Yeah.
Eventually, they caved.
Right. And this is after how long?
Nearly 3 months.
Okay, so they kind of worked you through the process, didn't they? Hoping that you'd probably give up.
Pretty much.
Right, and go, you know what, actually don't worry about it.
Yep, and we eventually got it out of them. And what I will say is, I didn't expect to be able to say this, but the Information Commissioner's Office has been really, really helpful. So it's not just...
That is unusual.
Yeah, it's not that's just the Greater London Authority. The most common responses across the board are, you know, it's too much time, too much effort. We don't actually know, we can't figure it out.
Right.
And the Information Commission has been intervening once I've been sending them escalations. They just in the last week, they forced Camden to answer to me as well. They forced Hull up north to answer to me. So we're making progress. We've now got 112 out of the 196 that I initially reached out to.
Okay.
So we're getting a good picture.
And have you had any kind of interaction with anyone in those areas who have said, crikey, this is an awful lot of money. I'm glad you highlighted this because now we need to look at why we're spending so much.
No,
funnily enough.
Strangely enough.
Because this is the thing, you know, these public sector organisations who have got all of our money, who continue to charge us, as you say, extra money every year, people's council tax is going up by 5% plus every single year, you know.
Remember, despite all of the others out there, it's always the others.
On some kind of loop.
No.
Sorry. Don't worry. The thing is that you know, they don't seem to have a care in the world about, one, how much they're spending, or two, whether they have even considered trying to cut something. Because what we hear, for example, from this Labour government all the time is that, you know, we're going to have to get a handle on this or that or the other, or we're going to have to tax you more. But they never say we're going to save some money, do they?
That's exactly right. And I went into this completely naive. As I say, I'm not from a political background, just looking to understand where the money's going.
Right.
And we're talking about such small percentages. Like if we take the bigger picture, what was it? We had a £22 billion black hole or whatever the line was.
Well, so they say.
Right.
But they're now borrowing $22 billion a month,
they are.
basically.
But if you have a $3 trillion economy, that's less than 1%.
Right.
And so you're dealing with such small percentages in terms of spending and savings that it's clearly a political choice because you can make different choices. You could cut back a little bit on some agency consultants or, you know, lawyers or whatever else. I mean, obviously you've got to do the fundamentals, but there are clear choices being made to go down this route.
But you've found a lot of consultants, as you say, a lot of lawyers, a lot of kind of, you know, recruitment consultants being paid money, a lot of people being re-educated or being put on courses. You know, it's none of it appears to me anyway to be essential spending.
Well, that's the thing, and that's the other thing I've discovered as I've gone through this, is they actually, when you look at council spend, they love to put up those infographics that tell you that 40% goes on care or 20% goes on housing. When you actually dig into that, what you find is that the majority, well, not the majority, but a proportion of
quite a
that
big
spend, and it varies from council to council. It's why I don't want to say majority. In some it may be, but it's hidden under those line items. So, for example, Waltham Forest have payments allocated to the homeless programme, but it's to Adecco, the recruitment company.
Right.
Now, I have no problem with them hiring someone from Adecco to work on the homeless programme.
Right.
But let's be clear, that's not a homeless expense.
That's not, no, exactly right. And how much, for example, would that be?
Are we talking for the Adecco one specifically? Or?
Yeah.
The Adecco one from memory was 15,000-ish.
Right.
I am calling ballpark figures here. I've got 1.6 million lines of data that I've got in the database, so forgive me if it was 18 or 12. But even things like I found Havering have allocated about £200,000 in the last financial year, or this financial year, to a recruitment company, but they've tagged it as telephone landline expenses.
Oh, yeah.
right? There are payments from Redbridge Council for waterbeds, right? Barking and Dagenham Council have spent £1.2 million in the first 7 months of this financial year on photocopying.
Wow.
And as you dig into this stuff, again, I'm not saying it's not necessarily essential, maybe it's perfectly justified, but when you're putting up my bill, I've got questions.
Yeah, of course. And you've been doing this for how long, would you say?
6 months, 9 months.
Okay. And people are asking, you know, and being very complimentary about what you're doing. Is there any way that you can put all of this information on a website? Is it on a website?
I need to figure out how to do that. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, there might be people
I
out
can go
there
through the expenses. But yes, anyone wants to help me build a website?
We can probably help with that. There you go. Pooch is a man of many parts. He's known as the octopus over there because he's got so many things on the go at the same time. But yeah, I mean, but it's a fascinating and it's a really, really worthwhile endeavour to me, because you know what we must do, it seems to me, in this country is get a handle on public spending, and if they can't figure out how to save money, then we should tell them exactly how they can do it, because then they have to justify why they can't do it. You know, because when, for example, you know, Starmer said he was going to cut back on welfare, and he got the rebellion on the back benches, and in the end they couldn't do it. You know, here's an opportunity for us to say to them, well, look, here's what you can do, and you know. Even maybe you don't have to stop welfare recipients from getting money, but you can certainly make it cheaper for the administration of those payments.
100%.
Or you can make it, you know, why are you spending £2 million on photocopying? That kind of thing.
Exactly that. And with the DWP specifically now, if we know they haven't passed audit in 37 years, a lot of this has been framed around, well, you're going to potentially take away, you know, benefits from people that need it, which is a fair concern.
Yeah.
But if we know they haven't passed audit for 37 years, well, now there's clearly a mandate to go and forensically look at that.
You would think.
And that's not about targeting anyone, it's just about fiscal responsibility, because maybe we can actually afford to give people more benefits or whatever if we actually find out where the money's going that, you know, in the National Audit Office's own words, material fraud is taking place.
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't appear as though anybody is watching over that. And so for all we know, quite a lot of this money might be being funneled off to nefarious individuals or, you know, family members or companies that are kind of, you know, in favour with the local council. And as people get ready to vote in May for local council elections, these are really important issues, aren't they? Fully
agree.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I went on this journey to not just look at my council, but to look at it across the board, because I'm a strong believer. I'm not necessarily trying to target anyone. I've dug up figures on every council run by every political party. It's just about transparency. Let's put it side by side, and then you can ask questions, for example, like Lewisham have spent roughly 800 million on this as per their own FOI response. But Bromley next door have spent 130 million. They've both got about 300,000 residents. So what's going on there?
So that's quite a lot of money together and separately, 700 million difference. It's not a drop in the ocean.
Not a drop in the ocean, and I imagine there's a lot of people in Lewisham who are struggling.
And people like us, you know, we set up a business, you know, what, 2 months ago, Pooch, maybe? 2.5 months ago. And, you know, you get council tax, you get business rates, you get VAT, you get HMRC all over you like a rash. You know, it's really hard to run a business, as you will know. TV licenses, they asked us for one of those the other day, didn't they? We don't want one. We're not buying one because we're not watching it. Simple. Just in case anyone from the TV licensing van is driving around with that little thing going, get lost. But they make it really hard to run a business. And yet, these people are spending, you know, they think nothing of spending 10 million quid like that.
Exactly like that.
Amazing. Well, listen, Lee, you're on Twitter, right? Lee Nalallingham is his name. And we'll certainly help you get a website up and running.
Fantastic.
Because what you're doing seems to be very, very worthwhile.
Oh, thank you very much.
Fantastic. Brilliant.
Lovely to meet you.
Yeah, Pooch will sort you out. Lee, thank you very much indeed. Lee Nalallingham is the name, and it's L. Nalallingham is the... I'll put the tweet out, actually, so that you can find it. But it's extraordinary. I mean, this is what Sadiq Khan, the Greater London Authority, spent on different categories per year, as per their own FOI response, right? Consultants, lawyers, recruitment agencies, professional services, staff training, marketing, office costs, 1.31 billion in 2019-2020, 1.24 billion 2020-21, 1.49 billion 21-22. Oh, look, it's gone up. 2.48 billion 22-23, 23-24, another 2 billion. I mean, it's just incredible. Incredible. 25-26 so far, 1.35 billion. Unbelievable stuff. Here's one from Robert who says, can we purchase a bumper sticker to be sent to Canada? Well, what we're hoping to be able to do is to mail out all of these bumper stickers, but it's going to be difficult to do it to anyone who's overseas, right? So what we're going to suggest to you is the best thing to do is to, if you can, and if you've got anybody here in this country that can get one sent to them, and then they can send it on to you, because obviously you can't send. We looked into this. You can't send a stamped addressed envelope, obviously with a Canadian stamp on it, because it won't work. There is a system that Royal Mail operate, which means that you can buy some kind of weird voucher, which you can then use to put a British stamp on it. But that's all very complicated. So what we're going to say to anyone who wants one of these bumper stickers who lives abroad is try and find somebody in this country who we can send it to, and then they can send it on to you. And that would probably be the best thing. But we'll keep you informed on that as we go. Coming up in the next couple of hours, we've got loads and loads of people to talk to. We've got Anne Widdecombe as well coming up. We've got Mark Littlewood, who's here, the greatest economist that ever lived, and a Southampton fan, which is not really his fault. But we'll talk to him about a whole bunch of stuff, including what he was writing about this weekend, which is the kind of the schism on the right side of politics between Restore Britain, Advance UK, and of course Reform. Not to mention the Tories as well. This is the Mike Graham Show. It is, what is it, 6 minutes past 8? Let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning, all. Here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. Good morning. The government unveils a major £4 billion overhaul of special educational needs and disabilities, SEND, support in England, promising more inclusive mainstream schools, extra funding, and reforms to address spiralling costs and delays for children. Police continue searches linked to the recent arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor over alleged misconduct tied to Jeffrey Epstein, with calls growing for a full inquiry or even treason probe. Prince William appeared at the BAFTAs admitting he's not in a calm state amid the family crisis. Elsewhere, the Conservatives pledged to cut high interest on Plan 2 student loans, calling them a debt trap. Reform UK sets out radical migration plans, including an ICE-style border agency and ending Leave to Remain. Team GB celebrates a record equaling Winter Olympics medal haul from Milan Cortina. Last night's BAFTAs saw one battle after another win big, including Best Film. Tragically, a young girl and woman died in a Hampshire car crash, and tributes continue for victims in other incidents. That's your UK Headlines Roundup. Stay tuned for more. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters Tigers.
Edward Hughes there with the news. Thank you very much indeed. Out there, of course, Plank of the Week is very much available to watch. We'll play you a little clip from that later on. Plonk of the Week we did as well over the weekend, which is also worth a look. We're going to speak to Mark Littlewood in a second, who's here from Popular Conservatism, of course. First up, though, let's have a look at Robert Jenrick. He was doing the rounds yesterday. I think we'll have him on the show pretty soon. I think we've got Zia Yusuf coming. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Let's have a look at what Robert Jenrick had to say yesterday on Camilla Tominey's show on GB News.
But I meant to ask you, where's this Labour defector?
Oh, coming soon.
Really?
Coming soon.
How soon? Next week?
You have to ask Nigel when
Got
he's
them
back
lined
from
up?
the Chagos Islands.
Oh, yes, indeed. Back from the Chagos Island.
Nigel Farage, of course, went to the Chagos Islands at the weekend, but couldn't get there and was stopped by the government from being able to get to a place which was 120 miles away from Diego Garcia, the base, and he was told that it was a matter of national security. You're not supposed to go there without permission, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. As a lot of people pointed out, it's the only boat that Keir Starmer's managed to stop, which of course is the one that Nigel Farage was on, trying to get to Chagos. Mark Littlewood's here. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good to see you, Mike.
People were calling it a stunt at the weekend. I don't agree with that. I think, yes, they've got a by-election coming up in Gorton and Denton on Thursday. And yes, Reform may be kind of coming in a close second to the Green Party. But I think Nigel Farage making the point of going out to Chagos and trying to get to see the people who have basically started to occupy that land was a pretty worthwhile endeavour, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it can be a stunt and a worthwhile endeavour, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things Farage is absolutely brilliant at is drawing attention to things, right?
Yes.
So you can call that a stunt if you want, but if you're leading a party of whatever it is now, 8 MPs in Westminster, you've got to be hungry for publicity at all times. And as you rightly say, this seems to be the only boat they can stop. How many thousands of miles away are the Chagos Islands? They were also able to give to the blokes their deportation order.
Yeah.
They can't seem to issue any of these in London or any of our major cities.
There was a great headline in The Sun last week. British citizens threatened with 3 years in jail for occupying British territory from Britain.
Yes,
and you kind of go, right, so you're going to put people in prison for 3 years for going back to their homeland, but for people who come here illegally, you're not going to do anything other than give them a free pizza, a blanket, and put them up in a hotel.
It just shows you when the will is there politically, you can get the administrative wheels whirring, right?
Yeah.
But so it's all about will. I mean, the whole Chagos Islands thing, it's a scandal, really. I think when the whole story comes out,
it's shocking the way that they're dealing with it.
And it seems to be the only thing the Prime Minister won't U-turn on.
Yeah.
Right? This is the only thing he really cares about, is giving away sovereign British territory.
And do you know what's weird is that guy who is one of his best friends, supposedly, the human rights lawyer.
Philippe Sands, are you talking
Lord
about?
Hermer, yeah.
Oh, and Lord Hermer.
Philippe Sands, yeah. He was actually interviewed. I'm sorry to have to admit this, but I was in the car, so I'm going to apologise. And I think it was on Friday. I was driving to Sussex, and so I had The World at 1 on Radio 4, which I very rarely listen to.
You still got PTSD from it?
Yeah, I'm struggling with that, and I thought to myself while I was listening to it, if they try and charge me for this, I'm definitely not paying. Right. But this guy Philippe Sands, or whatever his name is, more or less said, look, this is a done deal. There's nothing that anybody can do. And his reasoning for that was that a load of judges at the International Court of Justice, which we shouldn't be recognising anyway, have said that we should be giving it back to Chagos. He then quoted the United Nations, who also said that we should be giving it back. Of course they'll say that, right? But what he didn't account for was the fact that the Chagosians themselves don't want it to be given away. They want it to remain British. They want to remain British. They'd like to live there. Thanks very much indeed. But he was more or less dismissive of any kind of democratic conversation around what we do.
But I think this gets to the nub of the issue, Mike, that it's nearly impossible to work out what the philosophy or ideology of this government is, apart from idiocy, right? With one exception. They are obsessed with international human rights law. This is the absolute gospel to them. If any court or arbitration panel, sort of anywhere in the world, with anyone who can just about masquerade as a judge, gives down some sort of verdict, they all jump around as if it has to be complied with immediately. And of course, the other issue that's coming out now is it seems, look, I'm not an expert on international law, but all of these judgments don't apply under some maritime law when a military base is involved, because there are national security issues. So once again, look, with President Trump, loathe him or love him, you can't ignore him. It looks like we're going to be having to look over the ocean for British sovereignty and British freedoms to be saved again.
And of course, again, Starmer's office in Downing Street is spinning the idea that the reason that Donald Trump has now decided that giving away the Chagos Islands is a bad idea is only because we won't let him use our air bases, or indeed their air bases in this country, to launch attacks on Iran from. Because again, that's apparently against international law, or it might be. But I don't think that's the reason that Trump is doing it. I think Trump is doing it because, as far as he's concerned, it's the wrong thing to do.
Yes, I think that's right.
Finally, somebody's actually alerted him to it, as opposed to just, kind of brushing it under the carpet and going, no, you don't want to know about that. He's worked out that it's actually quite a dangerous principle to give away a geographical location, which is a place where you have a very, very important international military base.
Oh, that Diego Garcia base is absolutely vital, just because of its positioning. Now, the theory under the UK government's plan is that we would still have it under lease. But once you've given away all these rights to Mauritius, who are frankly an ally of communist China, the idea that you would be able to run that base securely with the Chinese very, very close by is for the birds.
It really is.
So let's hope that this is stopped in its tracks. I mean, as I say, it does seem to be the only thing the government won't U-turn on, which seems absolutely extraordinary. But the more you dig into this, the worse it smells, doesn't it?
Absolutely right. And this guy, Philippe Sands, was pictured, of course, not long ago, planting a Mauritian flag into the ground in the Chagos Islands, not as if he's in any way, impartial or anything like that.
Well, you would also sort of think, you would hope, wouldn't you, that those closest to the Prime Minister would unambiguously always be working in the British national interest. Nevertheless, there you go, a clip of planting a Mauritian flag on British soil.
And also in being in receipt of a bounty of something like 8.4 million quid from the Mauritian government, which he and his mates in the human rights lawyers firm have been sharing. He also was credited with writing a piece or giving an interview, I think, some years ago, in which he admitted that he doesn't actually recognise borders, and he thinks that borders are for the birds, and that actually we'd all be better off if we were global citizens of the world, and everybody could move freely within one place or another, which is kind of ironic given that they're trying to block the Chagosians from going back to their own country.
Yes, quite. It doesn't even apply consistently, this slightly weird view of the world that it should be completely borderless. But I mean, the other thing is, if that really is the Labour government's view, that, you know, there should be no flags, no borders, we have one world on which to live, well, they didn't articulate that very clearly at the last election, and the British people wouldn't vote for it.
No, indeed. Well, we'll come back to the state of the Labour government in a moment, but first let's talk about what you wrote. I read it last night. Very interesting piece, actually, because it's what everybody, I suppose, on the right is currently obsessed with, and that is, you know, what is going on with Restore Britain, what is going on with Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib, who's running Advance UK. There seems to be a bit of a rift and a row going on there. What's going on with the modern Conservative Party under Kemi Badenoch, and what, of course, is going on with Reform and Nigel Farage and this by-election, which is coming up in a couple of days. And so your take on it is that all of it will kind of come out in the wash eventually, but is it a good thing?
Well, it has to come out in the wash eventually. My basic theory, Mike, is we're going through, actually, on both sides of the aisle, quite a substantial realignment of British politics. So the days where you had basically the Conservative Party completely dominating the right and Labour completely dominating the left, it looks like those days are over. So on the right, the Conservative Party's got to do a lot of pivoting. My God, if it wants to be the dominant force on the right, it's consistently behind reform. But as you're going through these big realignments, you're not quite sure what the nature or the force of the party or alliance or coalition that will emerge. You tend to get a lot of splintering, and that's what we're seeing. So you've got the Tories saying, look, come on, we're the only serious party, we know which way's up, all right, we made a complete horlicks of the last government, but at least we know sort of how to run a spreadsheet and add things up. You've got Reform, who've got, you know, have had all of the momentum. You might say that they've hit a little bit of a glass ceiling at the moment. You know, they've done brilliantly to get to sort of the high 20s or 30% of the vote, but it seems a stretch for them to break much beyond that. We'll see whether they can do that in the local elections. And then you've got this new entity, which doesn't really seem to have registered in the opinion polls yet, led by Rupert Lowe, but has, on their own account, attracted tens of thousands of members. So within a week, it's got more members than the Liberal Democrats, even if it's not yet registering on the polls. Then they're falling out with Ben Habib, who'd set up his own Advance UK. I mean, it's now faction after faction after faction. I suspect that at some point, necessity will dictate that there has to be some coming together on the right, especially if all of these parties basically agree on the platform. I mean, I think virtually everybody on the right agrees we need to leave the ECHR, for sake of argument, that we need to repeal an awful lot of human rights law, for example, that the state is out of control and the blob is too powerful, for example. Now, they'll all have differences and nuances about how to approach it, and Rupert Lowe seems to be saying, none of you are approaching it remotely seriously enough or fast enough or lethally enough.
Well, his main sort of plank, if you like, of policy is immigration, isn't it? As is the case with Reform, you might argue, as is the case perhaps with the Tories. The Tories are damaged on immigration, of course, because they were responsible for an awful lot of
they were asleep at the wheel at best
that came in over the past several years when they were running the government. But yeah, the row seems to be between Reform, Restore and Advance about exactly who you're going to deport.
Yes, and I think it would be a lot better at this stage if we kind of tried to lay down some principles and then work backwards from there, right? So I would basically have put aside asylum at the moment, somebody who puts their arms in the air and says, you've got to let me in, otherwise I'll be tortured to death back home. Put aside those sort of claims, which I think we treat with far too much credulity, right? We don't ask for. We don't ask,
and we
for
let them
proof
go
of that.
for many, many different rounds of asylum.
Yes,
don't we?
And once you've failed, you get endless appeals where we kick you out. But let's look at immigration. Who do we want to come in? And it seems to me that the principles should be, before we get into all these sort of arguments about whether we're going to deport whole communities of people, the principles should be from here. Are you a net contributor? Right. So are you going to be paying in more in tax, basically, than you're collecting in benefits over your lifetime? So that'd be a bit of a guess and a calculation. But basically, if you're coming here to claim benefits, we're not interested. And secondly, which is a bit harder, I guess, to measure, a bit more abstract, but are you simpatico? Will you fit in with British values? You know, are you in favour of freedom of speech? You know, women being treated fairly, the rule of law, all of the rest of it. And if you can't tick both boxes, you don't get in.
Yeah.
And I would have thought if all the parties could agree on this on the right, then it would be easier to come together.
But they can't, that's the problem, because I mean, we saw, for example, at the weekend, a story that you probably could find any day of the week if you wanted to look for it, where a Christian preacher went into, I think it was Whitechapel in East London, which is now a very Muslim area, and was preaching and was sort of roughed up and was kind of abused by a bunch of Muslims who were there. The police got involved, and there was a very, I don't think we've actually got the clip, but there was a very brave young policewoman who said to these Muslim guys, look, you know, if you don't like it, you can just walk away, just go to cross the road. And they said, their argument was, this is a Muslim area, he's not allowed to preach here. And you kind of go, sorry, mate, that's not the way Britain works, you know?
Exactly.
If you want to go and wander into, you know, the grounds of Westminster Cathedral, which is a Catholic church, and you want to read copies of the Quran to people, you'll be allowed to do it. In the same way, if somebody wants to come to Whitechapel and start preaching, I'm not a fan of preachers of any kind, to be honest, but I mean, you know, they've got the absolute right to do it. And I do not want to live in a country where any ethnic minority gets to dictate to people whether it's their area and you can't go in there.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And look, I mean, we've been the authors of our own downfall here, haven't we, Mike? Because Britain is an incredibly tolerant, decent society. I mean, I think on almost any analysis that you look at, we're about the least racist country in the world, right? We're incredibly tolerant. But there's a danger, isn't there, that we have become so open-minded we can't keep anything in. Right. And so determined are we not to cause offence to any minority religion that we're overindulgent.
The problem for me is not so much that we're tolerant, it's that we are kind of deliberately now, if you like, discriminating against what many people would call traditional British values. Because we're so busy bending over backwards that we're about to fall over.
Yeah, and an example of that, I don't quite know where it's got to here, it's yet another government policy that seems to keep hitting the buffers, thank God. But are we going to bring in a definition of Islamophobia? Right, so this would basically give blasphemy protections to all intents and purposes to Islam that don't exist for Christianity. You know, it was decades ago we got rid of them, or Judaism. So this, you know, I mean, I think we should be, you know, conscious of some of the difficulties that minority groups might face in society, but we have dialed that up to 100, such that we are overindulging them. Consequently, these people start taking the mick, assuming that they've got the complete run of the country. And that has to stop. And, you know, this example you've given in Whitechapel, but, you know, these sort of incidents are, you know, too common elsewhere, needs to be dealt with a bloody firm stick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, we can't just say, oh, well, you know, thank God there was a local women police constable who dealt with it well. This has to be very clear that that is not tolerated.
No, absolutely. Otherwise, it's a very slippery slope, it would seem to me.
And we're halfway down that slope.
Oh, we are. And let's just go back to the whole Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib thing. Ben Habib sent when Rupert Lowe announced that he was changing Restore Britain from a movement into a political party, which he did, I guess, just over roughly a week ago. Ben Habib sent a message saying, you know, we'd love to get together with you, we'd love to join forces, you know, what can we do? They didn't get any answer for several days, and when they did get an answer, finally it was on X only, where Rupert said, oh, you're very welcome to join, to which Ben Habib said to me, because we had him on last week, actually, I joined the movement, you know, last year. I'm asking you about whether we join forces as a kind of co-leadership type scenario. And it all seems to have fallen apart since then. I watched a video again last night, which I'm not sure we've got, where Ben Habib said, you know, is Restore Britain just another dictatorship? Because it would appear that it's a company registered to one Rupert Lowe, with one share registered to one Rupert Lowe, which is why Ben Habib left Reform in the first place. He said it was a limited company and it wasn't actually democratic, la 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 la. So, I mean, it's all a bit internecine and ridiculous, isn't it?
It is. Well, I mean, Restore Britain is a one-man, one-vote party. Rupert Lowe is the one man and he has the one vote. That's the structure at the moment. Yeah, I mean, Ben Habib's big issue on the insurgent parties on the right, and I think therefore why he set up Advance UK himself, is that the parties need to be sort of purely democratic as well. If you're arguing for more democracy at a UK level, you need to practice what you preach and have that at a political party level. I'm not totally persuaded of that. I mean, I think if you don't give members of a political party some degree of power over at least advising on policy, selecting the candidates for their local area, then people will sort of say, well, what's the point of me being a member of the party then? But I don't think you need everything determined by the membership of a political party. You need some leadership as well. His big criticism of Nigel Farage is that Farage has too much power within Reform. But Farage will counter that when UKIP, one of his sort of predecessor parties, became too democratic, everything actually became internecine warfare. You know, you're forever sitting around committee meetings working out which faction has got more votes to get this through or that through, and you turn your attention away from broadcasting to the British people. So Ben Habib's big issue is, right, what's the constitution of the given party? But on the face of it, it's an unedifying spectacle on the right of politics, and there is this oddity that by and large, I don't want to overstate this, but by and large, a good chunk of the Conservative Party, certainly including Kemi Badenoch, the overwhelming majority of Reform, from what I can gather, Ben Habib's Advance UK and Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain, have broadly the same prognosis and solutions for the country. Broadly. There are differences of degree and emphasis, no doubt about it. Consequently, all these splits and divides come into who do you trust? Who can you work with? Who can't you work with? Which personalities get on with each other? And look, if there's 3 years to go to the general election, that doesn't necessarily matter. But by the time one gets to the next general election, my supposition is that whichever side wins, the left or the right, will be the one that you can unite more rapidly and more quickly under whatever banner. And at the moment, the splits on the right are so obvious.
They've got to stop being so childish and sort of calling each other names and having to go at each other and saying, you should stop calling me names, and then they call them a name.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's kind of really, as I say, a bit unedifying, because at the end of the day, you know, most of us who are sensible in this country just want rid of this hopeless, ghastly, useless Labour government, right? To wit, to come on to that, Keir Starmer over the weekend probably sighing a huge, great sigh of relief because of the fact that that Andrew was arrested on Thursday, and that seems to have dominated the papers for the best part of the last few days. But still, questions being asked about Peter Mandelson, why he hasn't been arrested, if he was indeed found to be in breach of his own, you know, public office duties, etc. Plus, also a lot of stories at the weekend around Wes Streeting, saying that you know, Starmer should get rid of him. He's a bad influence. He's constantly kind of you know, talking behind people's backs and trying to you know, besmirch Starmer. What's going on with that?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I genuinely thought like Labour would have got rid of Starmer by now, even if he was serving out a few months. It is unbelievable that they haven't. Obviously, one of the reasons they haven't is those who wanted to remove the Prime Minister, who we presume includes Wes Streeting. I think that's an open secret. Just didn't at the final point put in the knife, right? So that, I mean, they can't, you know, they're pretty hopeless at all things they do, but they can't even conduct a coup d'etat with any degree of competence. So Streeting is now beached because for the meantime, everybody's decided that Starmer's got to stay. One wonders whether that changes after the Gorton and Denton by-election. If they keep Starmer on all the way through to the May elections and Labour get a total shellacking there, presumably this all opens up all over again. I don't know many people who think, even in the Labour Party, that Keir Starmer will be Prime Minister and lead them into the next election. But if you've reached that conclusion about your party leader, you're best to act pretty quick and decisively and move on, rather than dragging it out and killing him death by 1,000 cuts. So the suggestion is, Mike, as I understand it, is that at some point, when Starmer needs another deflection, if Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is not providing a sufficient one, he will conduct some sort of reshuffle, move people around, and that might be an opportunity to kick Wes Streeting out. But of course, if Wes Streeting is on the backbenches rather than bound by cabinet collective responsibility, he really can say what he wants. So he might have less influence, less power, but he will probably be considerably more outspoken.
Right. Let's talk about the by-election. Just a couple of days away. Thursday evening, I guess it will be. Gorton and Denton up there. I think the last poll I saw had the Greens slightly in the lead but not very much in the lead.
Yep.
And the story being at the weekend that it turns out that their candidate, Hannah Spencer, I think it is, is a landlord, despite the fact that they're against landlords.
Yeah, the Greens.
How surprising.
Yeah, well, the Greens are a complete contradiction, really. I mean, on the one hand, they're courting the Muslim vote. On the other hand, they're all waving rainbow flags. I don't know how you keep that coalition together.
Yeah.
Their economic policy bears absolutely no scrutiny. I mean, collapses almost with any contact with reality.
Yeah.
But the reason you mentioned that the polls, they show a relatively tight race, but with Labour in third, unbelievably, in a seat which I think was their fifth safest in the country at the last election. The bookies would also agree with that the Greens are odds-on favourite to win, Reform a good second, and Labour coming behind in third place. So what's probably happening is that Labour voters, by and large, or those who have stuck with Labour until the last few weeks, are more inclined to vote Green as a protest than Reform as a protest.
Well,
That's
Jeremy
probably what's
Corbyn, I think, has put out a clarion call to that effect.
Yes,
I noticed, by the way, at the weekend that they were still trying to find a leader.
Right.
I wasn't aware that they didn't have one still.
What about Ben Habib? Could he become the leader of your party?
I mean, it's possible. I mean,
your party's at least very democratic.
Well,
right?
he might say that. He says they're not just one share owned by one person. We just had the odds up there, Pooch. Can we just have another look at those? We've got the Greens at 4-9 on. Reform at 9-4, Labour 9-1, Workers of Great Britain 125-1, Liberal Democrats 150-1, Conservatives 275. There's no Advance UK in there because that's
they are
obviously
running,
quite an interesting.
Well, interestingly, the Workers' Party are reckoned to have a better chance than the Tories and the Liberal Democrats. They're not even running a candidate, right?
Brilliant.
That, by the way, is the other thing that probably helps the Greens, that had George Galloway run, or it's George Galloway's party, had he put forward a candidate, that would have further split the left vote. It might have peeled off 5-10% from the Greens.
People haven't mentioned the fact that George Galloway appears to be currently living in Russia.
Is that right?
He keeps putting pictures of himself up in Moscow.
So he's not running in Gorton and Denton, he's running in the Moscow East by
I think so, We're hoping for a spot in the Politburo at some point, But Galloway is, for all of his faults, a very willing and interesting participant in any by-election. Whenever Galloway turns up, it always, becomes something which is worth watching.
And I'd also say about him, although I agree with him on virtually nothing, I did agree with him on Brexit, but probably for different reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a formidable character.
He is.
I'm often asked over how long have I been doing TV or radio? 30 years, let's say. Who is the opponent I fear the most? It's George Galloway.
Yeah.
He is the hardest person to win an argument against in a radio or TV studio.
Because he's incredibly logical, and also you can't, turn anything against him, because if you try, he's so used to people trying to sort of slag him off for supporting the wrong thing.
Yep.
I mean, like, the brilliance of Galloway, I think, for anybody who hasn't seen it, is his appearance before the Senate committee.
Absolutely stunning.
When he was quizzed by various, rather jumped-up senators about his friendship with Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, he's incredibly quick.
And the original, because I remember I was in Scotland at the time running the Mirror, and we put it on the front page. It was just George, Gorgeous George 1, US Senate 0.
Yeah.
And that was how we framed it, because it was, I think the first question was about how many times he'd met Saddam Hussein, and to which he said, I have met Saddam Hussein more times than you, Senator, but less times than Donald Rumsfeld, who has met him 5 times to my 3. And it was just fantastic, brilliant.
He can be vicious and charming
I
at the same
occasionally
time.
watch it. Just as a sort of an exercise in how to win an argument. Because it's so brilliant.
Yeah.
So your prediction for the by-election is that the Greens win it. Do you think? I mean, can Reform come back at a sort of a final rally? I mean, I think the trouble is, and with all due respect to Matt Goodwin, who we know a little bit here, we've asked to get him on, by the way, but he hasn't managed to find his way to the studio, or indeed down the line. His kind of one of the more ridiculous things that he did was get on the top of an open-top bus and talk like a robot, saying that Keir Starmer talks like a robot.
Right, yeah.
Which was mildly embarrassing.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer talks like a robot. And you go, well, so do you, mate.
Look.
Nothing personal, Matt.
But by-election campaigns, people always drop the ball in a number of different places. There's been I think, Labour are under investigation for potentially treating the electorate, which means providing with goods or services to try and encourage them to vote Labour. We'll see how that investigation goes. Quite a lot of it there, and this is where I feel for people in a by-election seat. You get bombarded so much. I mean, just imagine how much political literature has gone through the average letterbox in Gorton, and how many times you've had a knock on the door from one political party or another.
It's only worse, is it?
But a lot of it will depend on how good on Thursday the party machines are in getting their votes out. They'll still be desperately chasing down the undecideds, although if you're still saying you're undecided now, you're probably not that likely to vote.
Right.
So on the day, it will be a race between, I suspect, principally the Greens and Reform, although the Labour Party has a decent machine there, of, right, if you said you voted Labour, how can we drag you to the polls?
Yeah.
And it might be close enough that the success of that operation determines the outcome. I think that's a possibility.
I think that's a very good point.
But everybody, it's always true in electoral politics, isn't it, Mike? It's an expectations game. So in any normal circumstances at all, Labour would hold this seat comfortably. Right? I mean, as I say, I think it's the 5th safest seat in the country. If you're losing this, you basically would be down to virtually zero representation in Parliament. If there's any suggestion from going from pretty much your safest seat in the country to coming third, I mean, not just sort of a good second, losing it to somebody, that shows how far the Labour votes collapsed. And the opinion polls are suggesting that basically Labour has lost half its vote since the last election. And I suspect that will be echoed in the result in Gorton.
And will Advance perhaps also have a sort of role to play if they take, because a lot of people mention...
Nick Buckley, isn't it?
It's Nick Buckley. A lot of people mention, Sarah Pochin's win in Runcorn, which was only by 6 votes, right? If it's a similar situation in Advance, even get 10 or 20 votes. He was saying he was hoping to get a couple of thousand, maybe 10% if he's lucky. I don't think he'll get that. But, he could have enough of an effect to stop Reform getting in.
But then maybe we need 1 or 2 results like this, going back to the article I wrote over the weekend, Mike, in order to prove that splitting the vote is spectacularly unhelpful. You've got far too many people, I think, on the right of British politics are acting as if we already had a proportional representation voting system, at which point it doesn't matter, because you could have 5 parties of the right getting 10 or 11% each, and that's fine. You'll each get 10 or 11% of the votes, and you can produce a coalition between you. But in the first past the post system, you are punished brutally if there's a split in the vote. Brutally. And it might be that 1 or 2% is the margin of victory in Gorton and Denton. And then I think if you are an Advance UK supporter, you've got to say, well, is that really the contribution you'd want to make? Handing the seat to the Greens rather than to Matt Goodwin, if that's the way it falls?
Quite unpopular when he was on with us, I think last week or the week before, when he said basically we're after Reform votes. And people from Reform were like, shouldn't you be after Labour votes? Shouldn't you be trying to take votes from the Greens? What are you doing taking votes from Reform?
Exactly. So we've got, unfortunately, it goes back to this personality clash, doesn't it? There are some differences of ideology in, some people. It's going to be interesting how Nigel Farage reacts to this, right? Because for years and years and years and years, I thought Farage and his parties, whether that was UKIP or the Brexit Party or Reform, was a useful check and balance on the Tories. When the Tories went off grid or too far to the left, up pops Nigel Farage, potentially with a new party, garners a whole load of votes, and the Conservatives then have to tilt in Farage's direction, and then he takes a step back. It might be that Farage now finds himself in the position that the Tories used to be in. He's now outflanked on his right, with these parties sort of saying, I find it a bit strange to sort of say that the big criticism of Nigel Farage is he's a bit of a wet, lily-livered, moderate centrist, right? It's an unusual way of attacking him.
But as you pointed out, that may be to his advantage.
It could be to his advantage that probably for Nigel and Reform, they must be thinking, even if they don't see the equation in quite this way, how do we get from the 28, 29, 30% rate in the polls up to 35, 36, 37? Because if you're at those sort of numbers, then you're really talking very seriously about winning the election outright with a decent majority. And they might be thinking they need to get that extra 6, 7, 8% of the vote by appealing to people who aren't necessarily firmly on the right of politics. They might have hoovered up all they can there. But people who are just disillusioned, perhaps centrist, perhaps a bit worried that Reform aren't a mainstream party. And if they need to pitch, therefore, not to lily-livered centrists, but just to people who aren't particularly ideological, it is potentially useful to them to say, well, look at those loonies over there.
Yeah.
We're not as hardcore as them.
Yeah.
You know, we aren't.
But again,
on the
there's a
hard
lot
way.
of that going on, isn't there? The Tories are saying that about reform.
Yep.
Reform are saying that about restore.
Yep.
Advance are saying it about restore.
Yep.
And restore are saying it about the reform.
It is a circular firing squad.
It's a sort of, it is a circular firing squad. Who's the most nutty man in the room?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's weird, isn't it? But luckily, it's not us. That's
It's
the main
not us.
thing.
It's not us.
Mark, great to see you.
Great
Thank you
to
very
see
much
you,
indeed.
Mike.
Mark Littlewood there, Popular Conservatism, and a great economist, a man with his finger very much on the pulse. Go and have a look at what he wrote this weekend about the split on the right side. A couple of super chats coming up before we go to Anne Widdecombe. Really enjoying the show. Great guests again, says Tricia. Thank you very much indeed. There's maybe a few other super chats we could have a look at, Pooch, could we? One from Kaza, pair character jumping up and down saying #1 fan. Pair character? Not sure.
I've realised, Mike, it's the text explanation of an emoji.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, jump up and down and say you're a #1 fan. It's great. Stephen says this. I've built a UK council spending transparency project called Council Spend. Would love your thoughts sometime. Yeah. Well, if you can, Stephen, I mean, I think we've now got, Pooch, have we not, an email address that people can send things to. I know Charlotte's been giving it out. So we may be able to give that out to you if you want to get in touch with the show. There are more ways of doing it than just doing it on the YouTube chat. Also, of course, coming up, we've got a little. Should we play that little Anne Widdecombe thing we've got, which is ahead of Anne Widdecombe's weekly slot, which we're calling Widdy Weekly. Have a look.
Now, only two sorts of people oppose free speech, and they are at opposite ends of the scale: snowflakes and totalitarians. I am offended, upset, insulted at least 30 times a day. Tough. It is not necessary to flash your knickers to do a decent ballroom dance. Free speech is for all, not for the privileged few. Nobody has the right to live their lives being protected from offence or from insult or from hurt feelings. And if you really can't take it, become a hermit.
Widdy Weekly, what a good name, I have to say. We're delighted to say that Anne Widdecombe is going to join us every single Monday. She's going to share our thoughts with her own Substack members, and we are going to have a sort of, what can only be described as a collaboration. Anne, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Good to see you. Another fascinating sort of week since we last spoke, where we've got all sorts of stories. I wouldn't mind starting off with the Epstein caper, I suppose, because a lot of people asking me this weekend, it's all very well saying Andrew's a scumbag, he's a horrible person, he's not very nice, he's not very good to his staff, he's a terrible individual. But why is he singularly the only person that seems to be being held responsible for all of the stuff that went on? And not least with regards to people like Peter Mandelson, who appears to have been up to the same kind of shenanigans when it comes to sharing documents and stuff like that. Why has Mandelson not been arrested?
Well, it's a very good question. And indeed, why did Andrew have to be arrested? Why couldn't they simply have said, report to such and such a police station at such and such a time? And I'm afraid, there is a desire for melodrama. You recall, of course, the way that the BBC cooperated with the police to film the search of Cliff Richard's property.
Yes.
It turned out to be completely innocent. But, there was all this melodrama, and, I think that's what's going on at the moment. And you say, why Prince Andrew, or the former Prince Andrew? And the answer's got to be because he is the most prominent individual, and also by the one who's least able to hit back. So I say, remember Magna Carta, remember innocent until proved guilty, and let the law take its course.
Yes, because a lot of people, and you may know more about this than many people do, have said to me that this business of misconduct in a public office is a kind of relatively recent legal act which was brought in, I think, under Tony Blair's government. And it's quite a difficult charge to prove and quite a difficult charge to bring, isn't it?
Yes, it is. The fact is that if Peter Mandelson, in the office that he was holding, or the former Prince Andrew as a trade envoy, they were employees of the government effectively.
Mm.
And therefore, if they did give away information, what in an industrial context would have been called insider dealing, if they do give away information, then that is an offence in public office. There's no doubt about it. But there's an awful lot of proof that has to be there. You know, were they actually under a seal of secrecy? Did it matter at the particular time that they revealed it, etc., etc.? It's not going to be easy.
No, it's not going to be easy. And in terms of Mandelson, and a story on the front page of the newspaper, which broke lots of late yesterday, that number 10 definitely did fast track his security vetting. And people have said inside of government, well, you know, the thing is that does happen from time to time when you've got high profile figures. But in this case, there seems to have been quite a few kind of cuckoos in the nest, if you like. You know, everybody knew that Mandelson was bad news. Everybody knew that Mandelson was the one who pushed Andrew to be the trade envoy. Everybody knew that Mandelson had to resign twice. I mean, Gordon Brown now apparently is all over Mandelson like a rash, talking about how terrible it all is and he's investigating. And he was the guy that brought him back into government, for heaven's sake, in 2009.
Yes, I mean, it is a farce watching Labour trying to distance itself from Peter Mandelson when he was the most central figure of the new Labour project. And when he has been lionised in Labour ranks, particularly sort of new Labour ranks rather than old. He's been lionised, and I'm not surprised he was fast-tracked. They would have thought, well, that was all right. But in fact, the warning signs were all there.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I mean, a very interesting little message just popped up there. Can we just have that again? Sorry, this is from Ruth. Mandy has been corrupt from at least 1996 when he got the interest-free loan of $393,000 from Geoffrey Robertson, Paymaster General, who was Starmer's boss, of course, Hermer's boss at Doughty Chambers. And there is this kind of stench of what can only be described as human rights lawyers, which has now not only inveigled its way through the Blair government and the Brown government and now the Starmer government, but also has reached its all the way to the Chagos Islands, where we are now in a ludicrous situation where Keir Starmer has managed to stop one boat, and it's the boat that Nigel Farage was on.
Yes, I mean, I think if you look at this government, it's just been one record of incompetence throughout. The most notable feature is that Starmer never appears to take any responsibility.
No.
Never puts his hands up and says, I got that wrong, I shouldn't have done that. It's always the other person's fault. You know, they didn't give a full account. You know, Mandelson didn't give a full account. Well, that's the whole point of vetting. It's to find out the things that they haven't given a full account about. That's what its purpose is.
Right. Yeah, well, exactly right. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've hired people in my time. I've had to go for interviews in my time. I've had to have fairly sensitive information given to me that I was supposedly entrusted with. And you don't go, oh, well, so-and-so lied to me, therefore I gave them the job anyway, and and they shouldn't have lied to me. Well, that's what the vetting process is supposed to weed out, isn't it?
Exactly. That is what the vetting process is for. It's not for things that are known. You know, you don't need a vetting process for that.
Yeah.
It's for things that are not known. And that is the whole point of the vetting process.
Right.
And therefore, if you fast track anybody at all, you are effectively saying, you're saying this. You're saying, I back my judgment that nothing is going to come out. And that is what Starmer has got to say. He backed his judgment that there was going to be nothing revealed by a proper vetting process. Well, he was wrong. And therefore, the buck, as I said last week, stops on his desk.
Absolutely right. And just to go back to the royal situation, do you worry that this will affect King Charles? I mean, he's about to go on a trip to the USA in, I think, April. There are lots of questions now being asked about what he knew and when he knew it. We've seen Prince William and Kate, the Prince and Princess of Wales, at the BAFTAs last night, seemingly, you know, sort of keeping calm and carrying on and all that kind of thing. But is there I mean, constitutionally speaking, are you worried that this could have ramifications for the King?
No, I really don't think so. We go through this sort of upheaval occasionally. The last big time was in 1997, when there were all sorts of conspiracies floating around over Diana's death, and a huge public reaction. And the royals just kept calm, carried on, didn't explain, didn't complain, got on with it, and in the end that paid off, and that is what they're doing now. Now, this investigation is going to go on for a long time. The media will never be content just to say, let it go on. They're going to want a development every 5 minutes. So there's an uncomfortable time ahead for the royal family, but the crucial thing is they weren't friends with Epstein. And they didn't do any of these things. They didn't misconduct themselves in the public office. So just let them get on with it. And that's what I think they'll do. And I think if the late Prince Philip were here and were advising them, he would simply say to them, look, pretend this isn't happening. Just do what you would be doing if this were not happening.
Yes, and I think that's kind of how we all remember the monarchy operating. But of course, we are now subject to all sorts of interpretations from various people. I mean, I saw that in your Substack this weekend, you were writing about Laura Kunsberg and her interviewing technique and the fact that you were once interviewed by Jonathan Dimbleby. And I mean, I like to think, and I'm not by any means trying to make myself out to be as good as them, but we like to do sort of long form interviews. We like to, I'm not a fan of getting people like yourself on who've got a lot of interesting things to say and then say, well, I'm sorry, we're out of time, Anne. We've got to go now because we've got to get to the news or we've got to run a traffic report, which is what the beauty of being able to do this show. I can give you the time and I can give you the space to say exactly what you want.
Yes, and I think the interview from Laura Kunsberg that I was referring to was the one that she carried out with Admiral Widdecombe and Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
And they were talking in extremely serious terms about Ukraine and about what the British reaction should be and what we should do next. And she gave them space to answer. Now, we all know, all politicians know, when you're going on a programme, the nature of that programme. If you're going on the Today programme, you're not going to be able to expatiate at any length. You're going to have umpteen interruptions, and all you're going for is a few headlines. I mean, that's all it's about.
Yeah.
But the Dimbleby interview that I referred to lasted for 50 minutes, 50 minutes, and therefore there was plenty of time for him to drill down, but also plenty of time for me to answer in full. And it was, without exception, the most sensible interview I've ever had. And yours, of course, is midway. You're not going to give me 50 minutes, but nor are you going to cut me off after 2.
No.
So these sorts of interviews, and I really hope the sort of work that you're doing catches on. These sort of interviews are hugely useful.
Yes, no, I think so. And judging by the numbers of people that are watching and the comments that we get, they really appreciate it because I think the people of this country have been, gaslit enough by media companies and the likes of Sky News and the BBC, as you say, many times, because they're not interested in exploring thoughts. They're not really interested in exploring ideas. They're not interested in discussing things at any length, which is kind of what you have to do. I mean, what we're talking about this morning, and these are all massively important subjects, and people care about them, and they want to be treated with respect and actually, educated is probably a bit of a pompous way of putting it, but they want to know what it is that you think, and they want to know how you would change things, and if you would. I mean, for example, we just spoke to Mark Littlewood, the economist, about the splitting at the moment of the sort of the various different factions on the right, with the introduction of Restore Britain, with Advance UK, with Reform. I mean, what do you make of all of that?
I make of all of that it is unhelpful, but it is not going to decide anything. Now, I have been for some time resisting the notion of uniting the right when it comes to Reform and the Tories, for example.
Yeah.
But when the general election comes, when it comes to Reform and Restore, or whatever it might be, when the election comes, people are going to ask themselves what they always ask themselves, which is, what is my best chance of getting a particular type of government? And they know that Reform is electable. We've been at the top of the polls for a very long time. They know that Restore is not electable, and that will influence them at the time. And sometimes that's very frustrating. I mean, it happened when the Brexit Party was standing candidates in 2019, and people were saying, "Oh, I really want to vote for you, but I don't want to let Corbyn in." Or I really want to vote for you, but I don't want to let the Tories in. And so people do think, and there is no way that anybody is going to vote for a tiny splinter group over a very successful poll-leading party. when the election comes.
Right. And I mean, coming up, of course, this week is the Gorton and Denton by-election, which a lot of people are pointing to as a possibility anyway, that the Greens could win it. I don't know. I hope to God they don't, because obviously that would be a bit of a nightmare. I'm not quite sure people have realised quite how mad the Green Party is. But they want to, legalise heroin, they want to legalise crack cocaine, they want to legalise all drugs, they want to have no borders. Hannah Spencer, who's their candidate, it turns out, is a landlord, which, of course, I've got nothing against, but they have against land. They don't want to think landlords should exist, Is it going to be a problem, do you think, for reform if they don't win it?
No, I don't think so. I don't even think it will be a particular setback, because it has never been said of this election that it was going to be a clear win for reform. People have always taken into account the Greens, but I think that you make a very major point, which is that most people haven't a clue what the Greens stand for. They think they're this sort of tree-hugging, terribly cosy party. They're not. They're neo-communists. They really are. I said that to Zach Polanski when I was doing the Jeremy Vine programme, and I was on with him, and I said, that's communist, a particular policy that he was espousing. Now, in this country, people have solidly rejected the extreme left. I mean, they rejected Neil Kinnock, for example, when he had a highly left-wing programme, Michael Foot when he had a highly left-wing programme, and Jeremy Corbyn, of course. They don't like it. And so I think one of the tasks that the other parties have, all of us, not just Reform, all of us, is to expose what the Greens really stand for.
Yes, I think that's right. And if they were to get...
stand for, what they have come to stand for is probably a better expression. Yeah.
Yes, I think so. And in terms of the way that, as you say, the reform kind of continues to gather momentum, I suppose. I mean, is there an issue of timing? Because, they always say it in rugby, the best thing to do is to peak at the right moment. There's no point in peaking when you're in the sort of, autumn internationals, if you want to win the Six Nations. You want to peak during the Six Nations. Does reform run the risk of peaking a bit too early, do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's a very good question, but I don't think so, because it was crucial that we should demonstrate that we are a credible political party. A lot of people thought of us as some sort of pop-up party, a party of protest, a fringe party. It was absolutely crucial, in order to build on it, that we establish from the outset that we're a serious party. And we've done that with our position in the polls. Now, yes, there is always a danger that when you're running ahead, you might slip a bit later on. But it was crucial that we got ourselves into that position. Nobody now writes us off. Nobody says, it's impossible for reform to win. Only 2 years ago, we would have been laughed to scorn if we talked about forming the next government. So we're making very good progress. We've got to build on it. We've got to have the team of spokesmen. Now, we've got a few, but we've got to get more. We've got to have a team of spokesmen in place. We've got to have cracking good policies. But above all, what people rely on us for is will. That what we say we will do, we will actually do, that we have the will to do it. We're not going to be crushed by the machine.
And Reform are going to have quite a big week, I think, coming up. Zia Youssef's written a piece in the Mail today talking about restoring Christian heritage to the UK, talking about restoring, security to the borders of this country. Quite a big sort of set-piece speech I think he's making, a little bit later on today. It's quite a fascinating sort of take, isn't it? Because, as I say, I think we've got... Can we play that clip, Pooch, of the East End police officer who was called into a bit of a dispute between some local Muslims in, I think, Whitechapel, because a Christian preacher had gone in there and they were saying that the preacher wasn't welcome. Have a look at this.
At the end of the day, look, you guys can clear off and then he could kick off trouble with others.
And if he does, really, there's cameras here, so the cameras are monitoring what's going on.
But sometimes it might be too late. He's recording.
Yeah, it's in a public space. It's in public space. So the cameras are constantly monitoring, so I think they've been here for a few days. So they are constantly monitoring it. This is a high patrol area anyway. Any calls we will always respond to, all right? They're fully aware of the risks of the fact that it's a very heavily Muslim community and there could be a lot of pushback, all right? It is being monitored. It's their own risk.
What are the risks?
The risks are that they could get assaulted.
Oh, right.
isn't it? If people are taking it in a certain way, that is the risk they're taking. However, it's all being monitored on CCTV, multiple patrols in the area.
You're not allowed to say anything about
You're not allowed to say anything. You're not allowed to say anything.
If actually is incorrect, we're allowed to say anything about Jesus as well. We're not going to do that. We're not going to offend another religion.
He doesn't believe that he's not trying to feel like he's not really trying to.
People are telling him, stop it.
Listen, I hear you.
This guy become a worship a Jewish man.
Go ahead.
We just don't want you to worship false prophets. You want us to worship a Jewish man. True salvation. Is your God a Jew? True salvation by the Lord Jesus Christ. By the grace of God, not by your works. How many gods died for? Jesus Christ died for you. How many gods died for? Jesus Christ died for you. How many gods died for? You don't want to know.
I mean, this is the kind of thing that never used to happen in Britain, where people would be so intolerant of another person's faith. I mean, you know, I grew up, as I'm sure you did, Anne, you know, walking the streets of London where you'd have the guys with sandwich boards saying, you know, the end is nigh, or you'd go to Speaker's Corner. My father used to take me to Speaker's Corner and we'd stand there and listen, and he would heckle people, and it was all the fun of the fair. We've now got this kind of rather insidious world where people are going, you can't come into my area, I'm a Muslim, and I don't want to hear you speaking about Jesus Christ, who was a Jew. I mean, it's mad, isn't it?
It's completely mad and it's completely unacceptable. Now, this has been happening for a long time. I don't mean that it's been as bad as that for a long time, but it's been building towards that for a long time. You know, we've had many incidents of Christian street preachers being arrested. You know, not necessarily in Muslim areas, just preaching on the streets. But, you know, if they say one thing that offends anybody, the police move in and arrest them because they're offending people. Now, that police officer was actually doing a pretty good job of just saying, you know, you've got the cameras, you've got the proof and all the rest of it. But I think that as a country, we have confused tolerating other people's beliefs with surrendering our own.
Yeah.
That's what we've done. And I can point you right back to the millennium itself. You know, what were you celebrating at the millennium? If it wasn't 2,000 years of Christianity, I don't know what else it marked. And yet, the government of the day, Tony Blair's government, the government of the day actually wanted the whole occasion to pass off with virtually no mention of Christianity, no prayer, you know, nothing at all. And for once, just for once, the Church of England bishops did something useful. And they said, okay, you can do that, but we won't be there. We won't be there. We won't mark it that way. And they backed off. But the fact that 26 years ago this was going on, you know, what we've got now is a confrontation not with secularism but with the Muslim community, or what you've got in that clip. But no, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, whether you're Muslim or Christian or Jewish or whatever you are free to say the things you believe. You are free, as long as you don't use bullying to try and persuade other people to agree with you. You are free to tell them they are wrong. Other people are free to tell you you're wrong. That used to be Britain.
Well, exactly right. And as you say on the little bumper that we use to advertise your slot, you know, you don't have the right not to be offended. You don't have the right not to be insulted. You have to deal with it and just, you know, grow up and get over it.
Well, as I've always said, and that particular excerpt you took was from my speech at the Oxford Union, as I've always said, you know, being insulted, offended, having your feelings hurt, that's occupational hazard of being a human being. And if you don't want those things, then become a hermit. Just become a hermit, you know, cut off from society. But I'm afraid, you know, if you're mixing with other people, they are not always going to act as an echo chamber for you.
Yeah, exactly right. Absolutely. And also, isn't it great to see that young police officer speaking to these men in a way which people used to speak to each other, but which they don't much do anymore. You know, they're normally, it's all about, you know, we can't tell you why I'm telling you this, but, you know, you just have to take our word for it. She's actually reasoning with them, showing them why they're wrong.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, it was a very brave performance. It will have been wormwood and gall to them because she's a woman.
Yeah.
And a woman asserting her authority. It was a very good watch. And you know, when the police do act like that, it's very reassuring for the public.
Yes, absolutely right. Anne Widdecombe, brilliant to see you, and so glad that you're here with us for a weekly slot. Tell people how they can find your Substack if you wish to.
Yeah, well, it varies. Oh, I certainly wish to, yes. It's very, very easy. I have a Substack. If you simply just Google Anne Widdecombe Substack, it'll take you straight through. So don't worry about writing down particular links or anything. I post roughly twice a week. On a Wednesday and at the weekend. Occasionally I roll them both together, only post once a week. It's general commentary, political, social, sometimes I comment on tribunals and the nonsense that is before tribunals. So it's a very wide-ranging commentary. And all I can say to your viewers is, give it a try. I hope you enjoy it. And if you do decide to subscribe, rather than read it for free, then thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. Well, I can certainly endorse it for being full of common sense, as indeed are you. I've been asked to just ask you about the owl on your lapel. It looks, I think it's an owl. Is it an owl that you've got?
Yes. Here's my owl, yes.
We have a preponderance of herons here in the studio, so obviously the bird theme has reached your West Country home. What's the owl signifying?
I just like owls. I've got an owl clock in my kitchen and I've got owls on my cushions. I just like owls.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, I'm very glad to hear it. Anne, great to see you. We'll see you same time next week. Anne Widdecombe with an awful lot of sensible things to say there. Brilliant. How about this? What's interesting about doing a show like this is that it's funny what people hear and it's funny what people think they hear. Mur has said this. Did you just say heckling street preachers was fun back in the day? Sad. No. I didn't say that. I said my father used to take me to Speaker's Corner, which was fun back in the day. And my father would actually heckle the people who were making speeches about one thing or another. They weren't necessarily speaking about preaching. They weren't necessarily speaking about Christianity. They were just speaking about politics. And my father, who, a bit like myself, loved an argument, used to just sort of throw the odd jibe at them and shout things like rubbish because it amused him. And it was great fun. And I was about, 8 or 9 years of age, and I used to love going there. Nowadays, whenever I see people at Speaker's Corner, there's always some kind of punch-up going on between, Muslims and Christians. It seems to have become a kind of battleground for, religious bickering, which is unfortunate because, of course, many of the arguments and many of the ideas that come from places like that should be completely and utterly secular. Shouldn't be about religion necessarily. They can be. But they shouldn't be just about religion, should they? That's my point. We've got some super chats, I think, to run. If you want to get in touch that way, join up with our chat on YouTube, of course. It's constantly running. I'm constantly reading it, by the way. I don't always get to read things out. Bumblebee says, the guide was fabulous and the nighttime just added to the atmosphere. Ended up in the 10 bells. Wouldn't do it now, though. What a shame. I don't know what that's about. Labour's manifesto stated they would not cede any sovereign land, says Barbara. A lot of you saying how brilliant Anne is. Cindy Smith, brilliant Anne. Lord Viking, thanks Anne. Who has heard the call to prayer sounding out across the rooftop, says Hev Chip. A couple more super chats. Sorry, I didn't read the ones that were on the screen. Pooch is going to put them up for us as we speak, shortly before we go ahead and try and get hold of the First Minister of the Chagos Islands. Mike, the country is struggling, but thank God we have passionate journalists such as you to hold the idiotic elite to account. Keep up the fight, says Time Turner. Thank you very much indeed. Daz9062 says, great show, Mike. Daz, thank you very much indeed for the super chat. And lots of you have had really, really good positive things to say. And we've got, of course, all manner of stories to talk about. I think before we go to our next guest, one more. First time commenting, Mike. This is the only must-watch on TV. Brilliant show, says Will, 10291. Thank you very much, Will. Keep them coming. We're going to be going live to the Chagos Islands very shortly. But first, it's time for the news with Edward Hughes.
Here's the news with me, Edward Hughes. Good morning. The government unveils a major £4 billion overhaul of special educational needs and disabilities, SEND, support in England, promising more inclusive mainstream schools, extra funding, and reforms to address spiralling costs and delays for children. Police continue searches linked to the recent arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor over alleged misconduct tied to Jeffrey Epstein, with calls growing for a full inquiry or even treason probe. Prince William appeared at the BAFTAs admitting he's not in a calm state amid the family crisis. Elsewhere, the Conservatives pledged to cut high interest on Plan 2 student loans, calling them a debt trap. Reform UK sets out radical migration plans, including an ICE-style border agency and ending Leave to Remain. Team GB celebrates a record equaling Winter Olympics medal haul from Milan Cortina. Last night's BAFTAs saw one battle after another win big, including Best Film. Tragically, a young girl and woman died in a Hampshire car crash, and tributes continue for victims in other incidents. That's your UK Headlines Roundup. Stay tuned for more. Remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Edward Hughes with the news. We're here, of course, until 9:30. It's 10 minutes past 9 right now. And as I've said to you before, we will be telling you very soon how to get your hands on one of these lovely little things. This is, of course, the Mike Graham Show bumper sticker. It's quite a good size, actually, but we're going to be telling you how to get your hands on them. We're not going to be selling them. We're going to be giving them away. We're going to be asking you to send us a stamped address envelope. And if you're from another country abroad, there isn't really a great method by which we can do that. So if you can, what you need to do is try and maybe nominate somebody who is in this country who can get one from us and then pass it on to you. That would probably be the best thing to do. Right now, though, it's time to go to the Chagos Islands. Over the weekend, Nigel Farage, of course, tried to get to the Chagos Islands so that he could show his solidarity with Misley Mandarin, who's the First Minister of the Chagos Islands, and, of course, the other members of the Chagosian kind of lobbying group who are trying to basically tell this government that they do not wish for the islands to be given away. Misley, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the Mike Graham Show.
Good morning. For us this afternoon is 3:11 in the afternoon here. Yeah, good afternoon and good morning to you.
Misley, I'm just not quite hearing you very well there. Can we boost that a little bit, Pooch? Is that? Is it? Yeah, I'm just not. I'm not hearing it very loudly. If you. Yeah. Okay. Oh, so it's 11 minutes after 3 in the Chagos Islands. It looks like a lovely day there, Misley. How are things? See, this is what always happens when people get him on, because it's not a very good signal. Yeah, I think we've just lost the connection there.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah. It's just sticking a little bit. Carry on. No, this is always a bit of a worry. I've been watching Misley talking on various other different shows over the course of the last week, and there's always a slight problem with the signal. We'll try and get it back. The latest situation, as far as I'm aware, and we'll try and get Misley back in a minute, is that a judge has issued an order to temporarily block the deportation of Misley and 3 other Chagosians who travelled to the Chagos Islands to protest against the deal to hand it over to, of course, Mauritius, right? They arrived in a remote part of the archipelago on Monday of last week after sailing from Sri Lanka with the aim of establishing a permanent settlement on their homeland. One of the things that's most ridiculous about this whole situation is that the government, right, immediately, instead of kind of showing solidarity with these very, very hard done by local people from the Chagos Islands, instead their immediate reaction was to threaten them. Their immediate reaction was to issue a deportation order. Their immediate reaction was to say they shouldn't be there. They absolutely have to leave the Chagos Islands, and if they don't do so, we will basically deport them. The Sun wrote a great headline last week, which was something to the effect of, British people threatened with deportation from British land, which was owned by the British government. And it's so ridiculous. I think we may have Misley back. Shall we try again, Misley?
Let's do it again.
Yeah, there you go. I can hear you now. So how are things? How is the week going so far?
The week been better than expected. The only issue we had when we had the British patrol come here and tell me I have to move from my homeland, which is disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is disgusting. And isn't it terrible that the government's first kind of reaction to you going home is to try and deport you from your home?
Yes, and considering what happened in the 60s and 70s, and there's no consideration for British Chagosian. It means like we've been treated as animals. It seems for this Labour government. We're still animals for them.
Yeah, I know, it's awful. I saw a video at the weekend that Nigel Farage put out from Reform of some of the graves that are on the island from your relatives, people that would have been killed there and buried there. Tell us a bit about that graveyard.
We got a graveyard. We just went there earlier this morning. We painted the big cross, and we found out a couple of my ancestors. And guess what? We find one of the graves we strike especially thing, and I would say this person is a British person. Her name is Bernadette Thatcher, right? And we got a lot of names like Burton. Thatcher, a lot of British name as well in the grave. What we say, Chagos is not what we try to say African descent. Chagos is a range of British people, French people, people from Indonesia, from Madagascar as well. We were like a very proper civilization.
Right. And so in terms of what the situation is currently, a judge has issued a temporary order to stop the deportation plans of the British government, but that's only going to last for about a week or so. What are your plans for the next week or so?
And I said we stay put until we're guaranteed and we're sure this treaty is not ratified and put to in the bin. So we're going to stay. They're going to have to remove us by force. Yeah. I'm afraid.
And I mean, in terms of who would do that, who is there who could remove you by force? Is it members of the armed forces? Is it the Navy? Who is it?
So on DG, when I say DG Diego Garcia, we got about 40 Royal Marines, and the order have to come from number 10,
right,
directly to remove us. And I say to the royal servant of Britain, I was in the British Army as well. If you see this is not right, it's not the right thing to do, don't do it. Because they did it in the 60s and 70s, don't do it.
And what would be your message to the Prime Minister, to Keir Starmer, if you could send him a message? What would you say?
And I said to our Prime Minister, look, we are here. We establish a settlement permanently. It is time to correct what he's been doing in the 60s and 70s by a Labour government. But now he's in charge of a new Labour government. Show the example. Show we got heart. Show we got humanity. And stop this treaty.
Yeah. And in terms of support, you have obviously the support of Nigel Farage and the Reform Party. You have the support of a lot of Tory party members as well. Are you confident that you can win this?
We, like I said, for me to be here, I thank the Lord, because I'm in my faith. I'm a Christian. I pray every day. But it's not only political party, it's the British public have to speak out and say what the current government is doing is wrong, because it's a very, very bad stain on Britain itself. Because the British people, they did not know about the story. Now I'm exposing how we've been treated, how certain civil servants, certain politicians act in a very appalling way, in a very disgusting way toward the Chagos people.
Yeah. And what about your own family situation, Misley? Do you have family back in the UK? Do you have family with you? What's the situation?
I got my dad with me. My dad is 73. I got my daughter back in London. And I got my family back I got my mom back in London. They're all supportive what we are doing. And they are willing to come back and join us. And I'm afraid so. Yesterday, we were in a critical situation where water was very scarce, and we were waiting for Nigel to come and give some aid to us, like water.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the government stopped him. Yeah. And if we did not have rainwater, we could not. We're gonna be in a very different situation today.
Right. And so, in terms of where you're sleeping, how you're living right now, where are you sort of based?
We based on the atoll of Peros Banos, the island called Ile de Coin, and we got tent. We here Portugal plus ex-conservative MP Adam Holloway, and we've been eating well. We've been sleeping well. So yeah, we're good.
Are you catching your food? Are you fishing, or what are you eating?
We had stock. We had rice, and we had pulses and grains. So we lost for a few weeks, but as well we try to have a different diet. One day we're gonna eat like sausages, for example, in cans. The next day we're having fish. So that's gonna last for at least 2 weeks.
Okay, good. And let me ask you about Keir Starmer's kind of motivation here. Do you think he's being a bit racist in trying to stop you from going back to your homeland?
And I will completely agree with this, because if you see Falkland Islanders, you see the British government go and help them, and it's a sense of discrimination and racism in there, because we are black. But if we are black, but we are British, we all a British passport as well. Right. There's no difference if somebody white, black, or Asian. If we are British, we are British. We have to be treated like equally, like everybody else. British.
Yes. And in terms of your family, when would you be able to, if you could, move them out to where you are? I guess you'd have to, build houses. You'd have to kind of build communities again.
Our main issue is not about having the houses built. We want this treaty to be scraped, to be chucked out. There's no point to starting plans to build houses, bring my family there, and the treaty carry on, and we live under Mauritian government. We don't want that. That's the main issue. The main issue, Keir Starmer have to stop that treaty soon as possible. And then, instead of striking a deal with the Mauritian, the British government can strike a deal with me as First Minister of the Chagos Island, and then that's going to be in the interest of the US, of the UK, and for the taxpayers as well. You don't need to spend £30 billion over a century for that.
Yeah. No, I know, it's completely insane. It makes no sense at all. But the people who want to do it, all of Starmer's friends who are like human rights lawyers, they don't think that anybody should have the right to live in a country. They don't think you should have a passport. They don't think British people should have a passport. They think there should be no borders. They think we should all live in one big world. But that doesn't work, does it?
It doesn't work at all. And the thing is, it seems like there's no borders in Calais, where a small illegal migrant can come in anytime and having a hotel and having food and having everything. When a British...
Well, we were doing really well there, but I think we may have lost Wisley again. Have we? Possibly. Misley Mandarin, one of the British Chagosians who's journeyed to the Chagos Islands, right, and is living in a tent, eating out of cans, eating out of whatever fish they can catch. And he says, quite rightly, and I agree with him, that Keir Starmer's being racist here. Keir Starmer will absolutely hate being called a racist because he thinks that, that is the worst thing you can call somebody. Misley, have we got you back? We have got you back. Sorry, we just lost you there for a second.
Yeah, I was saying, if you see people coming from Calais to Dover on a small boat and having accommodation, having food, having human aid, when a member of British Parliament, a leader of a surgeon, as the most popular political party like Nigel Farage, come and try to bring some water for us, what the government did is stop him, which is appalling.
Yeah. It really is double standards, isn't it? Because, you just want to live a peaceful life in the land of your ancestors, the land of your, not necessarily your birth, but the land of where you belong. And I find it extraordinary.
My father was born here. He's there in front of me.
Yeah.
He's Queensland too. And you can't deport the same man twice.
Right. And I mean, technically speaking, presumably the government is going to call you a criminal, right?
So basically what been happening when we came here, so imagine this, Graham, you're in your house, they remove you from your house. When you try to get back in your house, they say to you, you're illegal now.
Yeah.
So you give your house to somebody, never owned your house before, the rightful owner. That's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, it's shocking. Absolutely shocking.
Yeah.
Is it possible to speak to your dad, or is he there?
No, my dad went fishing now.
Oh, he's gone fishing. Good for him. Good for him. What sort of fish do you catch there?
So we red snapper,
nice.
The mullet. Yeah, it's a range of fish, and we got lobsters as well.
Right.
And we got crabs. We got all a range of seafood, like you imagine in a abundant tropical sea.
Yes. I like the sound of it. I'd quite like to move there myself. What do you think?
Yeah, anytime. If Kerstam don't stop you to come here to visit land, British land.
Right. Is there a local language in Chagos as well, or is it English?
Yes. So basically, the Chagos Island we call a Creole. It's a broken French. That's why we talk here.
Okay. All right. Cool. Listen, Misley, it's been great to speak to you. We wish you all the best, and we wish you all the luck, and we will do whatever we can here to fight on your behalf, because we believe in your cause, and we believe that, and a lot of people are offering actually to help. I've got electricians offering to come and help you build a community, build a town. Bricklayers, people that work in England, they love you and they want you to win this, right? So anything that we can do, please let us know, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Not at all. Misley, thank you very much indeed. That is, of course, Misley Mandarin, who is the first minister of the Chagos Islands, talking there about how he believes that Keir Starmer, in this situation, is actually being racist, is discriminating against people because they're black, they're British. He's telling them they can't go back to their homeland. What a very interesting analogy that he made there. He said it's a bit like somebody comes and throws you out of your own house. You go down the pub, and you decide to go back to your own house, and they tell you that you're now no longer allowed in your own house because you're an illegal. And yet people are walking into this country every single day, right? Getting off dinghies, getting off boats, getting out of lorries, the back of lorries, coming in cars, coming illegally in all manner of different ways, and being welcomed and being looked after by you and me, the taxpayer. Jan says this, what an absolute coup, Mike. This is great hearing from Misley for more than a 2-minute soundbite. Yeah, he was great. He was fantastic. And I'm so glad we were able to make the connection work, because I know that I've seen him being interviewed before on other outlets, and it's difficult sometimes to keep the conversation going because the line is never that good. Chagosians need help and support, says Alison. Yes, they do. And we're going to give it to them. Matt says it's corruption. The roots of this deal should be investigated and we will be led to the money. Well, that guy, Felipe Sands, who I spoke to Mark Littlewood about, he's the guy who was working not just against the Chagosians, but working for the Mauritian government. He's the guy who got £8.4 million from the Mauritian government to split with his other partners at his human rights law firm. And he's also the guy who says that Chagosians really don't exist because nobody does. He's the one who said in a sort of academic article that there should never be such thing as a border, that people should not even have a passport. People should basically be able to be citizens of the world. That's what he thinks, and that's how we got to this place. Cindy says, Mike, you're electric. I think that's what she said. I'll tell you what, here's a story we didn't get to. You're naturally electric. The data centres, this is a good one. We might get into this tomorrow. Data centres, which are going to be needed to power the government's AI revolution, right? You know, this is what Starmer bangs on about all the time. AI revolution. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. All right? Apparently, The amount of electricity needed to power these things, right, is more than we currently consume at peak use. So forget about the future electricity prices. We will need more electricity than we currently use when we are using all the electricity that we use at its very, very peak just to power these data centers. So everything else will have to come second. I mean, just ridiculous, isn't it? Listen, it's been an amazing show. Thank you very much indeed to all of you for sending so many great messages in. We've had a couple of other super chats which I'll try and catch up with before we go because we've had so many messages today, but I can't quite find them now. I think you might have a couple. There's a couple there that I just saw which have disappeared. One from Tommy. It says, keep up the great show, Mike. You are the only daily show worth watching. Very funny and patriotic. Thank you very much indeed. We are the only TV show worth watching. It's a must watch. You can't miss it. And we'll be back, of course, tomorrow. Same time, same channel. It's YouTube. It's 7 a.m. And it is, of course, the only place to be. Coming up, look out for it on the Substack. I think we had a Substack problem, didn't we, Pooch, earlier on today? But we will fix it. But also we'll be doing Plank of the Day now as a separate clip. We'll do Mike's Meltdown as a separate clip. I'm going to tell you who Plank of the Day is very shortly, but you're going to have to look for it on YouTube. Same goes for Mike's Meltdown, which might well be about Chagos and about how ludicrous this man Keir Starmer is. Because he is, let's face it, a complete and utter plank. Plank of the Week also out there. Plonk of the Week out there as well if you want to go and watch it. It's coming up to very nearly 9:31. We'll see you again tomorrow. And no matter what happens, no matter how many of them out there you see, please do not be a plank.
Remember, despite all of the others out there, it's always the others. Don't be a plank.